Chapter 1399. I like Feng Wu. Chapter 1399. I like Feng Wu. Right now, Feng Wu had a bunch of immortal flowers in her hands and was asking everyone where the crown prince was. It was so obvious what she wanted to do. Feng Wu's face twisted a little, but she then recalled her mission and didn't know how to explain herself. It wasn't the first time that she had been misunderstood, so she decided to let it be. Her top priority now was to wake her beautiful master up. Feng Wu was still looking for Jun Linyuan when someone patted her on the shoulder. Grabbing the hand, Feng Wu tried to throw the person over her shoulder. Luckily, the person reacted in time, or else they really would have been thrown to the ground. Senior brother Xu Yunrua? Feng Wu exclaimed in surprise when she turned around and saw who it was. It was indeed Xu Yunrua, the student ranked 5th in initial, and the person who had led her to Chief Qiao at the beginning. He wasn't alone. There were several other people behind him, but Feng Wu didn't know any of them. Miss Feng Wu, nice to meet you. I'm Wu Yu. I'm Zhao Xingji. I'm Ning Yao. I'm Song Yichen. Feng Wu said. Hello. She wondered who these outstanding Tiage were. She had never heard their names before, nor did she know their faces. Seeing how confused Feng Wu was, Xu Yunrua smiled. They're all top 10 students of initial. Song Yichen is 7th, Ning Yao is 6th, I'm 5th, Zhao Xingji is 4th, and Wu Yu is 3rd. Feng Wu nodded again. But in fact, she had never seen the Year 2 billboard, and had no impression of their names. Song Yichen was displeased when he saw Feng Wu's indifferent face. After all, Feng Wu had replaced him on the billboard. Miss Feng Wu doesn't seem to think very highly of us, Song Yichen goaded. The immortal flower grove was packed, and all the teenagers here were ready to play the happy onlookers. As soon as they heard Song Yichen's deliberate comment, they started gathering around. Moreover, the teenagers from Imperial College were so handsome and outstanding that it was very difficult not to notice them when they came in a group. Feng Wu frowned and glanced at Song Yichen. She didn't want to make trouble, but she didn't like being turned into an enemy either. So she said indifferently, I don't even know who you are. Why should I look down on you? And you, are you so disgruntled because I took your place? Song Yichen flared up, because Feng Wu was right. You. And if that isn't enough, you tried to bring other people into this, and use them as an excuse. Are you sure they won't mind being exploited like that? Song Yichen said. You. Feng Wu waved him off. I'm sorry, but I don't have time for this. So please keep a lid on your resentment, or hate me quietly. Do you have a problem with that? Too bad, you'll have to swallow it. She then waved at Xu Yunrua and walked off. Feng Wu spoke very fast, and was right to the point, revealing Song Yichen's darkest secret, and rendering him speechless. Feng Wu had walked off by the time Song Yichen finally returned to his senses. Ha ha ha. Zhao Xingji couldn't help but laugh. Miss Feng Wu is so interesting. I like her. Chapter 1400, Am I Wrong? Chapter 1400, Am I Wrong? Song Yichen threw a dirty look at Zhao Xingji. Senior brother Zhao. In case you haven't noticed, Feng Wu is looking everywhere for His Royal Highness with a bunch of immortal flowers in her hands. Zhao Xingji said grumpily. Practically all the girls are in love with the crown prince. 9 out of 10 girls in this grove are like that. Ask around if you don't believe me. He wasn't wrong. Jun Linyuan outshone all teenagers of his age. Even someone like young Lord Feng was a commoner in comparison, let alone these students. Zhao Xingji said, I know that. It's only normal for her to like His Royal Highness, but there's no way that His Royal Highness will like her back. Therefore I still have a chance. Xu Yunrua glanced at Zhao Xingji with his brooding, sharp eyes and asked, Why don't you think His Royal Highness will like her back? Zhao Xingji didn't know what to say. Have you forgotten who His Royal Highness is? He's the greatest genius this empire has ever seen. The crown prince of this empire, who looks down on us from up in the clouds. He's like a god. Why would he fall in love with a mortal girl? Many people agreed with Zhao Xingji, especially the teenage girls around them. They agreed with everything Zhao Xingji said. Xu Yunrua gave Zhao Xingji an indifferent glance. Is that so? Zhao Xingji asked, Am I wrong? Xu Yunrua said, His Royal Highness likes Feng Wu. As a bystander, Xu Yinrua could see things more clearly. But those around them? Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. Oh God, I'm cracking up here. No one believed him. And they all seemed to have heard the funniest joke. Xu Yinrua fell silent. Zhao Xingji patted Xu Yinrua on the shoulder and said, Junior brother Xu, if you're so confident about that, how about we go have a look? Zhao Xingji and his friends were here to meet girls, but their aim had just changed. Song Yichen was the first to agree. He was so frustrated by Feng Wu's comment earlier that he couldn't wait to see Feng Wu get slapped in the face. Sure, let's go. I'd love to see His Royal Highness give that arrogant Feng Wu the cold shoulder during the Immortal Flower Festival. Hence, the group of teenagers followed Feng Wu. They had already drawn quite some attention, and the spectating teenage girls naturally followed the group when they set out to follow Feng Wu. Before long, there was a very long line behind Feng Wu, and her heart sank when she saw the scene. She then saw Song Yichen's taunting look and Zhao Xingji's half-smile, and she felt like screaming. However, Feng Wu's merit was that she always focused on what she wanted. If she wanted something done, she could stay unperturbed, no matter how embarrassing it would be or how many people were watching. Looking around, Feng Wu soon spotted a familiar figure, and she immediately caught him when he wasn't looking. Mu the Sixth, you're not going anywhere. Feng Wu grabbed him by the back of his collar. Mu the Sixth was Feng Sun's minion, and would do whatever Feng Sun said. Therefore, Feng Wu didn't find her action inappropriate. But the other people around her were terrified. Hey, Feng Wu, that's outrageous. That's young Lord Mu. Song Yichen was astonished when he saw Feng Wu pick Mu the Sixth up. Feng Wu glanced at him in bewilderment, and wondered what could possibly be wrong with her picking Mu the Sixth up like that. Chapter 1401 Sister-in-Law, That Hurts. Chapter 1401, Sister-in-Law That Hurts. Seeing that Feng Wu wouldn't let go of Mu the Sixth, Song Yichen rushed over and lashed out at Feng Wu. Feng Wu, do you have a death wish? Do you know who this is? He's young Lord Mu, the son of Lord Mu. How dare you disrespect him like this? Members of the Song family were lower-ranking officials than those of the Mu family. To be more precise, Song Yichen's family had to depend on the Mu family most of the time. Therefore, he had always shown Mu the Sixth great respect. Behind him, apart from Xu Yinrua, all the other teenagers were also giving Feng Wu odd looks. How arrogant did Feng Wu have to be to treat the son of a lord like that? Mu the Sixth could be very terrifying when he was angry. But, to their surprise, Mu the Sixth wasn't mad. Instead, he smiled obsequiously at Feng Wu. Pinching his ear, Feng Wu asked, Why did you run away from me? Mu the Sixth said, I didn't. I really didn't. Feng Wu twisted his ear. You didn't? You disappeared as soon as you saw me, didn't you? Mu the Sixth almost jumped to his feet. My lady, please go easy on me. SSSS. That hurts. Feng Wu grunted. So you can still feel pain. I thought you're immune to it. Where's Feng Sun now? Speak. Seeing the way Feng Wu interacted with Mu the Sixth, the onlookers sucked in their breaths. Holy shit. Were they seeing things? She was the neglected daughter of the Feng family, while he was the favorite son of a lord. However, Feng Wu showed no respect toward the young lord. Miss Feng, how can you do that? You. Song Yichen was still trying to speak up for Mu the Sixth, but as soon as he spoke, Feng Wu put more pressure on Mu the Sixth's ear, and the latter stopped Song Yichen in vexation. Song Yichen, shut the fuck up. Song Yichen was dumbfounded. He was speaking up for the young lord, but why was he the one getting yelled at? Brother Mu, this Feng Wu is such a shrew. Let me get rid of her for you. Song Yichen reached for Feng Wu's shoulder as he spoke. Mu the Sixth's eyes flickered, and his pupils contracted. He then shouted, Stop. How dare you try to touch her? Huh? Song Yichen jumped and looked at Mu the Sixth in bewilderment. Mu the Sixth was so vexed. He had mistaken Feng Wu for Feng Sun's girlfriend at first, but as it turned out, the crown prince was the suitor. Anyone who tried to touch her would have their hands snapped off. Meanwhile, Feng Wu had already let go of Mu the Sixth's ear. His left ear glowed red, which showed how hard Feng Wu had pinched it. Mu the sixth, she's just a common girl. How can you be so afraid of her? Song Yichen tried to drive a wedge between the two people. To his surprise, his brother Mu raised a hand and slapped him. Smack! The crisp sound baffled everyone. Mu the sixth glared at Song Yichen. I'm warning you. I can live with you disrespecting me. But if you dare say one harsh word about my sister-in-law, I'll chop you into little pieces. What was that about? Song Yichen was befuddled. Feng Wu flared up and kicked Mu the sixth. What are you talking about? I'm not your sister-in-law. Mu the sixth was like a furious god when he yelled at Song Yichen. But when he turned back to Feng Wu, he behaved like a naughty monkey. Ouch! Sister-in-law, that hurts. Mu the sixth whined, stumbled back, then turned to flee. Chapter 1402 Feng Sun's Teasing. Chapter 1402 Feng Sun's Teasing. Feng Wu was furious. Mu the sixth. Stop right there. Resting her hands on her waist, Feng Wu shouted after Mu the sixth. Take another step, I dare you. Ahem. Mu the sixth raised his hands over his head and turned around. Fine, fine. I won't run. Sister-in-law, don't be mad. Feng Wu wanted to kick him. I'm not your sister-in-law. Ahem. Alright, sister-in-law, you're not my sister-in-law. I mean, you're not my sister-in-law at all. It's all my fault. Please don't be mad, sister-in-law. Brother Feng would kill me. Brother Feng had given him specific instructions, telling him that the crown prince was fond of Feng Wu, and the girl wasn't someone he should offend. Seeing that the teenager wouldn't stop talking nonsense, Feng Wu gave up trying to correct him, and only asked, Where's Feng Sen? Take me to him. Feng Sen? Song Yichen and the others exchanged bewildered looks, and wondered if there really was something going on between Feng Wu and young Lord Feng. If that was the case, Feng Wu was going to marry her way up the social ladder. At that thought, many people eyed Feng Wu enviously, and some were even overwhelmed with jealousy. Song Yichen and the others looked at one another, feeling perplexed. Young Lord Feng had indeed been present when Feng Wu took the Dragon's Gate challenge the other day. But they had thought that the young lord was there for the bet. Had he gone for Feng Wu? Song Yichen and the others wouldn't believe it. They couldn't accept the fact that Feng Wu had befriended an influential man like young Lord Feng. Just then, why, isn't it little Feng Wu? The crowd heard a voice. Feng Wu turned around to see none other than Feng Sun himself. Feng Wu threw a dirty look at Feng Sun and retorted, Oh my, isn't it young Lord Feng? To what do I owe this honor? Song Yichen was relieved. The two of them couldn't be familiar with each other, or else they wouldn't be talking to each other that way. However, Feng Sun's reply surprised everyone. Feng Wu crossed her arms over her chest and sneered at Feng Sun in an arrogant way, while Feng Sun walked up to her with a smile. Hey, are you mad at me? Feng Wu only rolled her eyes at him and wouldn't speak. Feng Sun poked Feng Wu in the arm. Hey, little Feng Wu, have I upset you? Was Feng Wu mad at Feng Sun? Actually, she was mad at the system for making her give Jun Linyuan flowers in public. The task made Feng Wu feel so awkward. Song Yichen and the others felt their hearts sink when they saw Feng Sun's demeanor. They had thought that Feng Sun had only shown up at the Dragon's Gate as a happy onlooker. But as it turned out, he had been there to support Feng Wu. They then recalled how Mu the Sixth had been addressing Feng Wu as his sister-in-law. Could it be? At that thought, Song Yichen felt as though a bucket of cold water had been poured over his head. If Feng Wu tells young Lord Feng that I picked on her. Song Yichen was scared by that thought. Luckily, Feng Wu was too busy to remember what he did. Right now, she was glaring at Feng Sun and said, Hey, I have a question for you. Feng Sun asked, What? Feng Wu sounded awkward when she asked, Where's Jun Linyuan? Feng Sun's eyes flickered. Boss Jun, is it? Looking down, he saw the immortal flower bouquet Feng Wu was holding and was thrilled. He made himself look surprised when he said, Little Feng Wu, what a fresh bunch of immortal flowers. There's still dew on the petals. Chapter 1403. Are her flowers for His Royal Highness? Chapter 1403. Are her flowers for His Royal Highness? Feng Wu rolled her eyes at him. That's hardly the point here. She had just bought the bouquet off some random passerby, and couldn't care less about the due. Feng Sun went on teasing her. Wait, didn't you refuse my invitation repeatedly yesterday? Why are you here now? Who are those flowers for? Seeing the teasing look in Feng Sun's eyes, Feng Wu felt like smacking him on the head. She glared at Feng Sun. Just tell me where Jun Linyuan is. Although she still had quite a lot of time left, what if Jun Linyuan was difficult to find? Or what if something happened, and she was delayed again? You're looking for Boss Jun. Rubbing his nose, Feng Sun looked at Feng Wu in amusement. And are those flowers for him? Feng Wu kicked him. Just tell me where he is. So, Feng Sun gave her a meaningful look. You wouldn't even consider coming here yesterday. But now, you're giving Boss Jun flowers. Feng Wu, you're playing hard to get, aren't you? Feng Sun. Feng Wu raised her fist. Please don't hit me. Feng Sun immediately surrendered. If you're so eager to see Boss Jun, of course I won't stop you. Come, I'll take you to him. Eager to see him. Feng Wu hated the way Feng Sun put it. But what could she say? She had no choice but to follow him. Feng Sun was being very naughty. He wouldn't stop teasing Feng Wu as they walked, and he didn't exactly try to keep his voice down. Song Yichen and the others exchanged confused looks again. Judging from their interaction, Feng Wu seemed to be on familiar terms with Feng Sun and the Crown Prince. Was it possible that something was going on between Feng Wu and His Royal Highness? That would be such bad news for Song Yichen and his friends. Song Yichen and Zhao Xingji looked at each other, and neither seemed too pleased. Right now, everyone was following Feng Wu and Feng Sun. But they were walking very fast, and only the teenagers from Initial were able to keep up with them. Look, Boss Jun is right over there. Feng Sun pointed at a tea house ahead of them. At the center of the grove stood a tea house made of immortal flower wood. The bullywood seats, and the immortal flower petals drifting down from the trees, made for quite a refreshing scene. The Crown Prince sat alone in the tea house with his eyes half closed. There was an indecipherable look on his face. No one could tell what he was thinking, nor did anyone dare to approach him. Teenage girls were circling the tea house at a distance. They didn't dare get any closer, but they didn't want to leave either, so they decided to stay and wait in the distance. Feng Sun gave Feng Wu a little push from behind. Go ahead. Boss Jun is right there. Hurry up. Feng Wu's face stiffened. Feng Sun was right. Although she had been looking everywhere for Jun Linyuan, she lost her courage now that she had found him. After all, she was supposed to give Jun Linyuan these flowers on such a special day when everyone was watching, and Feng Wu knew perfectly well what that meant. Hey, little Feng Wu, are you going to back out now? Feng Sun found his sister very amusing. Just then, a girl stepped out of the crowd with some flowers in her hands. She then pushed the door in the low fence open, summoned her courage, and walked into the tea house. From behind, her straight back reminded one of a warrior marching to her death. Is that Duguyamo? As in Duguyamo from Empress Duga's family. Is she going to give those flowers to His Royal Highness? Her aunt is the Empress, which makes her a kinsman of the Emperor. Even if she can't become the Crown Prince's official wife, she's good enough to be one of his consorts. Chapter 1404. What choice does Feng Wu have? Chapter 1404. What choice does Feng Wu have? Feng Sun was surprised to see Duguyamo taking action. He then threw a dirty look at Feng Wu and said, See? If you don't hurry up, other people will give their flowers to Boss Jun. Feng Wu snapped. So what if they do? Why should I care? You dumb girl. Feng Sun gently jabbed Feng Wu's temple with a finger. This festival is no joke. Only the first bouquet one receives has special meaning, and the ones after that don't count. Understand? Special meaning. Feng Wu shook her head. She didn't need any special meaning. As long as she could complete her mission, she couldn't care less if she was the first to give him flowers. Therefore she casually waved her hand. Don't worry. We shouldn't ruin his moment. I'll go after Duguyamo is done. Feng Wu already had a plan. Since Duguyamo was going to be the first to give him the flowers, the girl would get all the attention. That way, Feng Wu was confident that no one would notice her. Yes, that's what I'm gonna do. Feng Sun stared at Feng Wu in bewilderment. Aren't you mad? Feng Wu looked perfectly innocent. About what? Feng Sun said. About this. You're in love with Boss Jun, so you should feel jealous. Feng Wu rolled her eyes at him. Since when am I in love with him? Nonsense. Feng Sun pointed at Feng Wu with a shaking finger. You. She said she wouldn't come, but she did. And she came with a bunch of immortal flowers. As if that wasn't enough, she had been looking everywhere for His Royal Highness. Everything she had done so far indicated that she was in love with Jun Linyuan. But how can you still deny it? How can you? Little Feng Wu, you're so unbelievable. No wonder Boss Jun is so mad. Hearing Feng Sun's accusation, Feng Wu wanted to scream in frustration. She cursed the system. Just then, Master. The fairy spoke gingerly in Feng Wu's head. Feng Wu's heart sank a little, and she suddenly had a very bad feeling. Every time the fairy cringed and faltered, Feng Wu knew that something was about to go wrong. What is it? She felt uneasy. Well. Fearing that Feng Wu might want to hit her, the fairy recoiled and said timidly, Actually, there's a footnote in small font here. I missed it. What footnote? Well, it says that yours has to be the only bouquet of flowers. What is the only bouquet? Feng Wu was confused. It means that the crown prince can only accept your bouquet of flowers today. If he takes flowers before or after you give him yours, you fail your mission. What? Feng Wu felt as though she had been struck by lightning, and her ears buzzed. If the fairy was in front of her now, she would squeeze that tiny body in her hand. Feng Wu stared at the fairy with an indescribable look in her eyes. The fairy had practically curled into a ball. What choice did Feng Wu have? She turned her attention away from the fairy, and looked at Jun Linyuan, and Dugu Yamo in the tea house up ahead. Right now, Dugu Yamo was standing in front of the crown prince. One could tell how nervous she was from her stiff back. Chapter 1405, She was there first. Chapter 1405, She was there first. Why? Your Royal Highness. Dugu Yamo presented the light pink immortal flowers to Jun Linyuan with trembling hands. Please accept these. Dugu Yamo was nervous and frustrated at herself. She had worked on her lines the whole of last night, and had stayed up to memorize and rehearse her little speech. However, when the crown prince was actually in front of her, she was so nervous that she didn't know where to put her own hands. All her lines escaped her, and her head went completely blank. Dugu Yamo smiled bitterly. Her father was the emperor's brother-in-law, and she was respected like a real princess. She had more suitors than she could count, but she didn't like any of them. She had never expected that one day, she would stand in front of a teenager and wait for his verdict. But he was Jun Linyuan, the dream of all the teenage girls in the empire. Immediately, all eyes were on the crown prince. Is His Royal Highness going to accept it? Dugu Yamo is pretty and smart, and she's from an influential family. Maybe His Royal Highness really will. Even Dugu Yamo was so nervous around His Royal Highness. I wonder if any girl can act naturally around him. If His Royal Highness accepts Dugu Yamo, then. Look, His Royal Highness is reaching out to her. It was true. Jun Linyuan gave Feng Wu a sidelong glance. But at that moment, Feng Wu was bantering with Feng Sun. Other people might not be able to hear their conversation clearly, but Jun Linyuan could. She doesn't like me, right? Heh. All warmth disappeared from his eyes, and he gave off a terrifying energy. He then snatched the flowers out of Dugu Yamo's hands. Wow! Everyone cried out in surprise. The crown prince had taken the flowers. He had. Even Dugu Yamo herself was dumbfounded and forgot how to react, not to mention the crowd. Is this really happening? Dugu Yamo couldn't believe it. She had summoned her courage and stepped out, because she wanted to try even though she knew that she was almost certain to fail. Why, Your Royal Highness! She was so excited that she almost fainted. The crowd was shocked as well. His Royal Highness accepted the flowers. Holy crap! Is His Royal Highness finally interested in girls now? Is the Duga family going to have a second empress? No way. Duga Yamo can't possibly rise above Zhuqingyuan. She'll be a consort at most. What do you mean by a consort at most? That's like a second wife to the crown prince. The crown prince. The Duga family is going to be so happy now. The servants of the Duga family were indeed thrilled. They immediately headed back home, so that they could tell their clansmen the good news at once. In the crowd, Zhuqingyu was frowning. She had considered Dugu Yamo her good friend, but not only was the girl in love with the crown prince, she had done this. Zhuqingyu felt so betrayed, and was furious that someone had stolen the man she loved. Looking up, she saw Feng Wu and lashed out at her. Feng Wu, you look awful. Are you jealous? Zhuqingyu smiled. Chapter 1406, Amazing. Chapter 1406, Amazing. Feng Wu wasn't jealous, but she didn't look too happy either. She had been so sure that Jun Linyuan wouldn't take the flowers. Because she knew Jun Linyuan was an arrogant teenager who had very high standards. If he didn't find Feng Wu good enough, why would he fall for someone as vulgar as Dugu Yamo? Feng Wu was very confident on that point. But, to her surprise, the strict crown prince had very loose standards today. Seeing the way Jun Linyuan casually played with the small bunch of flowers, Feng Wu couldn't take it anymore. What would she do if Jun Linyuan really accepted that bouquet? What about her mission, her broken star piece, and her beautiful master? Feng Sun still wouldn't stop talking. See, you're too late. That's what happens when you play hard to get. Zhuqingyu wasn't helping either. She sneered at Feng Wu and said, For a moment there, I thought His Royal Highness really had a thing for you. I see that I was mistaken. Feng Wu, you're not much better than the rest. And a hubbub of other voices filled the air. Everyone was still talking when Feng Wu shoved the door in the fence open and rushed inside with her immortal flowers. Wow! The crowd was thrilled when they saw Feng Wu charge toward the tea house, looking like a lone warrior marching to her death. Her movements created a stir. To the onlookers, any change in the situation was exciting news, especially when it involved the crown prince's love life. Feng Wu is going in. Look, she's approaching the tea house. This is good. This is really good. Feng Wu is going to give her flowers too. Both girls are after the same man. That's awesome. Who do you think His Royal Highness will choose? While the crowd was discussing among themselves, Song Yichen and the others exchanged bewildered looks. Song Yichen also greatly admired Feng Wu. I didn't know Feng Wu was so brave. She's asking to get humiliated. Rubbing his chin, Zhao Xingji nodded. That's right. Dugu Yamo isn't as pretty as Feng Wu, but she's way more prominent in terms of her background. If I were His Royal Highness, I would choose the daughter of the Dugu family. Poor Feng Wu. She's going to be defeated and humiliated. Gosh, that's so shameful. I'm too embarrassed to stay here as her fellow classmate. It really is very humiliating. God, I feel too awkward to stay here. I can't bring myself to see Feng Wu getting her face slapped. Let's go, shall we? Ning Yao, who was sixth, suggested. Of course not. How can we leave now? Song Yichen refused without hesitation. Who were they kidding? They had followed Feng Wu all the way here to see her get humiliated. Now that it was finally going to happen, how could they leave now? Xu Yinruo glanced at Song Yichen. He would bet his own life that Feng Wu wouldn't be the one getting humiliated, for the crown prince had feelings for her. Therefore, when Ning Yao turned to him, he said, I'm not leaving. I want to see what happens next. He wanted to see Song Yichen and the others get their faces slapped. That's the spirit. Song Yichen had no idea what Xu Yinruo was thinking and patted the latter's arm in satisfaction. Meanwhile, the look on Zhuqingyu's face couldn't be any more indescribable. Chapter 1407, Jun Linyuan the Unmanageable One. Chapter 1407, Jun Linyuan the Unmanageable One. Zhuqingyu's eyes widened as Feng Wu walked past her and went into the tea house. She couldn't believe that Feng Wu had walked in just like that. Wasn't she afraid of the humiliation if he turned her down? Somehow, when Dugu Yamo walked in with her flowers, Zhuqingyu was enraged and felt betrayed. But when Feng Wu walked in, Zhuo Qingyu was worried, afraid, intimidated, and uneasy. Was it because His Royal Highness treated Feng Wu differently? Zhuo Qingyu clenched her fists. Feng Wu had no idea of the kind of stir her action had caused. She went straight up to Jun Linyuan and looked into his eyes. Her own eyes twinkled like stars. Duge Yamo was furious when she saw Feng Wu, and she felt intimidated as well. She was intimidated by Feng Wu's beauty that could drive men crazy, and her unpredictable behavior that could catch their interest. At the same time, the onlookers all held their breaths and watched. They wondered how the two teenage girls would compete with each other. And who would the crown prince choose? What would the result be? They were so curious. They all watched with sparkling eyes and were eager for some gossip. However, to everyone's surprise, the competition ended in the most unusual way. Feng Wu walked up to the crown prince, and acting as if no one else was around, she bent down and slowly drew closer to him. In the end, she was practically on top of him. Wow! The onlookers were utterly amazed. Isn't His Royal Highness supposed to be a neat freak? And I thought he wasn't into girls. I heard that he doesn't allow girls to linger within 30 meters of him. But now, Feng Wu was leaning in so close to Jun Linyuan that he could feel her breath on his lips. She looked like she was going to kiss him. The onlookers were so anxious. They were overwhelmed with mixed feelings of anger, anxiety, agitation, and jealousy, something they had never felt before. Song Yichen was dumbfounded. He stared at Feng Wu and pointed at her with a trembling finger. This isn't happening. Feng Wu is so bold. Why hasn't His Royal Highness pushed her away? Zhao Xingji clenched his fists. Zhuo Qingyu was so frustrated that she wanted to smack her own head. She regretted making the suggestion and cursed herself for provoking Feng Wu. Zhuo Qingyu went scarlet in the face, and her voice dripped with jealousy. She's offering herself to His Royal Highness, so why shouldn't he enjoy it? Someone next to her commented, "You can try it yourself and see if His Royal Highness will enjoy your company." You! Infuriated, Zhuo Qingyu turned around and wanted to hit the person. However, she saw that it was Mu the Sixth. He stood there with his hands on his waist as he made a face. And Feng Sun was standing next to him. Zhuo Qingyu could only grunt. Their little episode didn't attract much attention, because almost all eyes were on Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan. Duge Yamo was furious when she saw Feng Wu, but before she could do anything, Feng Wu had already rushed over and pressed herself against the crown prince. Chapter 1408. Jun Linyuan the Unmanageable 2. Chapter 1408. Jun Linyuan the Unmanageable 2. What was more, to Duge Yamo's frustration, as Feng Wu moved closer, she snatched the flowers Duge Yamo had given Jun Linyuan and threw them away. The small bouquet flew through the air and fell to the ground with a small thump. That abominable Feng Wu stuffed her own flowers into His Royal Highness's hands. Damn it! Duge Yamo's eyes went bloodshot red, as though they were on fire. Everyone saw what Feng Wu did, and they were all stunned. Feng Wu actually switched out Duge Yamo's flowers with her own, and she succeeded. His Royal Highness wasn't mad at her. They couldn't understand this world anymore. Ding! Feng Wu heard a voice in her head. The fifth trial completed. The fairy's voice had never sounded so pleasant. Phew! Feng Wu heaved a sigh of relief and slowly relaxed. She had been under a lot of pressure to take the initiative to approach Jun Linyuan, but to save her beautiful master, she had no other choice. Now that the fifth trial was finally over, and she had succeeded long before the deadline, Feng Wu felt very pleased. However, one couldn't say the same about the onlookers. It was especially the case with Song Yichen and Zhao Xingji. They felt as if they had just been slapped in the face, and were completely baffled. It would take them a while to recover. Zhuo Qingyu was the most displeased of them all. After her multiple confrontations with Feng Wu, Zhuo Qingyu probably knew her better than even Chaoge did. She clenched her fists in her sleeves. Damn it! If Duge Yamo had succeeded in becoming the crown prince's consort, Zhuo Qingyu would still be mad, but she would have been able to accept it, because like every other girl, she wasn't able to win his heart. But Feng Wu was a different story. Zhuo Qingyu had to admit that Feng Wu was special to Jun Linyuan. No one in the Zhuo family would acknowledge it, but Zhuo Qingyu knew that she couldn't keep lying to herself. She knew she couldn't let things carry on like this, because it was obvious that the crown prince was attracted to Feng Wu. Zhuo Qingyu looked at Du Guillermo. Du Guillermo, you're the only one I can count on now. Du Guillermo wasn't the type to swallow the humiliation. When the others weren't looking, she had already run to her flowers and picked them up. Feng Wu, you're not the only one who knows how to get close to His Royal Highness. Du Guillermo quickly ran up to Jun Linyuan and shoved Feng Wu out of her way. She moved as recklessly as a bull. Feng Wu was still enjoying her success and failed to notice Du Guillermo, so the latter actually managed to push her aside. Before Feng Wu realized what was happening, Du Guillermo had already approached the crown prince with her own flowers. Your Royal Highness, here are my flowers. Wow, wow, wow. The onlookers were thrilled. Here comes the fight. Finally. Come on. After much anticipation, the two girls were finally confronting each other. What would happen next? Would His Royal Highness accept Du Guillermo's flowers and cast Feng Wu aside? Chapter 1409, Jun Linyuan the Unmanageable 3. Chapter 1409, Jun Linyuan the Unmanageable 3. Or would Feng Wu grab Du Guillermo by the hair? Would they try to scratch each other's eyeballs out? OMG. This was so exciting. Zhuo Qingyu's heart raced and she looked thrilled. Song Yichen and the others were eager to see what would happen next as well. However, when everyone was so sure that a fight was going to start, thump, they heard a loud bang. Everyone watched as a figure was flung away from the crown prince. There was a whoosh, and she flew backward. That's Du Guillermo. Some had hoped that it was Feng Wu who would be sent flying, but they couldn't lie to themselves when they saw who it was. Du Guillermo had indeed been running toward the crown prince, but she was still an arm's length away from him when she was pushed away by a strange force. Thump. The impact sent Du Guillermo flying backward until she fell on her butt, looking utterly baffled. She wasn't the only one. The onlookers were just as astonished. Everyone watched with their mouths agape. The crown prince had risen to his feet. With his long legs and towering height, he cut quite an intimidating figure. He looked down at Feng Wu with his dark, brooding eyes. He had such well-defined features, and his profile was as perfect as a sculpture's. Right now, that extremely handsome face was moving closer and closer to Feng Wu. His scent seemed to wrap itself around Feng Wu. They were so close that they could feel each other's hot breaths. Lube-dub, lube-dub. Feng Wu could sense her heart racing. This wasn't part of the plan. She didn't know why this was happening, but she felt that things were getting out of hand. Thus, she instinctively rejected the feeling. Feng Wu bit her lower lip and stumbled back. However, the crown prince kept his gaze fixed on Feng Wu. As Feng Wu stepped back, he closed in. With his eyes narrowed, Jun Linyuan looked as dangerous as a forest leopard. Feng Wu turned to run, but Jun Linyuan caught her by her waist. His grip stopped her from taking another step. He stared at Feng Wu with his brooding eyes and waved the bouquet in front of her face. Feng Wu said, "Ah." Jun Linyuan's eyes seemed to turn red, and his voice was quite intimidating. "Speak." An ice-cold energy seemed to come off the crown prince, and the pressure made Feng Wu's heart skip a beat. "What do you want me to say?" Feng Wu didn't sound very confident. "What does this mean?" Jun Linyuan showed her the flowers. Feng Wu said, "Well that." "Speak." Feng Wu mumbled something. Jun Linyuan raised his eyebrows, and the energy coming off him became even more intimidating. He pushed Feng Wu backward until she hit the table. He then raised her fine, pointy chin with one long finger. The bullywood table was right behind Feng Wu, and Jun Linyuan had completely hemmed her in. She wasn't going anywhere. They were standing so close to each other, and their postures were so suggestive. It was very hard not to be put in mind of other things. Even Feng Wu couldn't help but blush. By then, all the onlookers were completely stupefied. Chapter 1410, Jun Linyuan the Unmanageable 4. Chapter 1410, Jun Linyuan the unmanageable 4. No. This was so big. The crown prince who was supposed to be uninterested in girls was touching Feng Wu's face. That move alone was enough to make one wonder. Feng Sun rubbed his chin, and his smiling eyes looked like two little crescent moons. Little Feng Wu, you dishonest girl. I'd like to see you deny your feelings this time. Feng Sun wouldn't know what to do if things didn't work out for them this time. However, to everyone's surprise, Feng Wu, the girl who was deemed to be the luckiest person in years. What the hell do you think you're doing? The moment the crown prince put his warm hand on her tender cheek, Feng Wu smacked his hand away. OMG, she had smacked the crown prince's hand. How could she bring herself to do it? He was the idol of all teenage girls in the empire, but Feng Wu had just smacked his hand away. And she had used so much force. They all heard the crisp sound. And they were all astonished. Had Feng Wu lost her mind? What was she thinking? Did she know what she was doing? Jun Linyuan frowned a little, and had that majestic look on his face again. He gave Feng Wu a sidelong glance, and moved closer again. With everyone watching, Feng Wu was very self-conscious, and she tried to push Jun Linyuan away. You get away from me. Now. She had no idea what was happening to her. She was usually the level-headed type, but her heart was racing now, and she even panicked a little. It wasn't like her at all. Go. Go where? Jun Linyuan wouldn't let her move, and pinned her arms behind her back. The position forced Feng Wu to stand on tiptoe to keep her balance, and to everyone else, it looked like she was throwing herself at him. Hey, Jun Linyuan, that's enough. You've gone too far. Feng Wu yelled anxiously. There were two people in this world that she couldn't see through no matter what. One was her beautiful master, and the other one was Jun Linyuan. I've gone too far. The crown prince stressed each word. They were so close that Feng Wu could see the ferocious look in his cold eyes. His grip was so tight that it reminded Feng Wu of a clamp. As Jun Linyuan uttered those words, Feng Wu felt his arms wrap tighter around her. SSSS. That hurts. Feng Wu drew in her breath. So is this only a joke to you? There was something very dangerous about the look in Jun Linyuan's eyes. His husky voice reminded her of the calm before a storm. Well. Feng Wu cringed and didn't dare look into Jun Linyuan's bloodshot eyes. There was no warmth in them. But there was rage, resentment, sarcasm, cruelty, and great sorrow. He looked like a wounded young cub, and she felt sorry for him. Other people couldn't see his eyes, but Dugu Yamo was close enough to notice the change in his emotions. Oh God. Dugu Yamo felt her head go blank. She couldn't believe that someone as unapproachable as the crown prince was capable of expressing human feelings. And the person who made him change was her. Feng Wu. Dugu Yamo stiffened. She felt cold, and her head went blank. She could no longer think straight. That was unbelievable. She couldn't believe it. But it was happening. Chapter 14:11. Jun Linyuan the Unmanageable 5. Chapter 14:11. Jun Linyuan the Unmanageable 5. However, to Dugu Yamo's further disbelief, when Jun Linyuan tried to express his feelings for Feng Wu, she smacked his hand away. How dare she be so pretentious? Dugu Yamo really wanted to slap Feng Wu. Feng Wu had no idea how Dugu Yamo felt, because all her attention was on Jun Linyuan now. That's right. It really was a joke. What? Can't your Royal Highness take a silly joke? Ha ha ha, are you that petty? She then surprised Jun Linyuan by stepping on his foot forcibly. After that, she shoved him away and tried to flee the scene. She was doing it again, running away as soon as she flirted with him. Jun Linyuan was infuriated. He knew that the girl was so daring, because he was so nice to her. He stared at her and smirked. The crowd was astonished. Everyone saw how Feng Wu smacked His Royal Highness's hand away, refused him, and even stepped on his foot. Any other person would have been killed by now. Not only was Feng Wu still alive, His Royal Highness was smiling at her as well. Had this world gone insane? Damn, I was right. Clenching her fists, Zhuo Qingyu was overwhelmed with jealousy and hatred. Song Yichen, and his friends could practically feel their faces getting slapped. They had come here to enjoy Feng Wu's predicament, but instead, Feng Xin was speechless. He had thought that Boss Jun was a very pretentious man, but as it turned out, Feng Wu was worse. What a pair! They were perfect for each other. They were so well suited. Feng Wu turned to run after she got free. Of course she had to. If she didn't run now, who knew what Jun Linyuan would do next? The man looked so dangerous, and she was certain that he would take his revenge. What happened just then was the perfect proof. But the system seemed to be working against Feng Wu. She had only taken a few steps when... My prettiest and smartest master. Feng Wu cursed under her breath as soon as she heard that cheap compliment. Save the flattery and cut to the chase, Feng Wu said uneasily. Well, ahem. The fairy cleared her throat, recoiled, and spoke gingerly. I have your 6th trial here. Feng Wu glowered at the fairy. Well, it just suddenly arrived. I was surprised too. Feng Wu shouted impatiently. What is it? Well, it's... The fairy hesitated and stammered, and she still couldn't form a coherent sentence after a while. Feng Wu had a bad feeling. If the task was easy, the fairy would have gladly told her. Her hesitation indicated that it was going to be another difficult task. Just tell me. Feng Wu wanted to roll her eyes. She had gone through enough difficult tasks to no longer be affected. Well, Master, the 6th trial is... You have to take back the flowers which you gave to the Crown Prince earlier. That's all. Feng Wu's eyes lit up. That wasn't a difficult task at all. With her glib tongue, Feng Wu believed that she could easily take the flowers back. Chapter 1412. Jun Linyuan the Unmanageable 6. Chapter 1412. Jun Linyuan the Unmanageable 6. No, my dear master. The key to this task is that His Royal Highness has to return the flowers voluntarily. Feng Wu cried out. What? The fairy nodded. Feng Wu asked, How much time do I have? The fairy said, You have until the end of today. Feng Wu asked, Can I do it tomorrow? The fairy said, You have until the end of today. Feng Wu asked, Are you sure? The fairy said, Very. Feng Wu rubbed her own forehead. What kind of system was this? Why did it seem to specialize in making Feng Wu's life miserable? Master? The fairy feared that it was too hard a blow to her young master. She knew the saying, to explode in silence or die in it. And she was worried that her young master might explode. But Feng Wu didn't know what the fairy was thinking. Taking a deep breath, Feng Wu adjusted her facial expression, slowly turned around, and stared at Jun Linyuan with her clear, bright eyes. She then smiled at him. Although she tried her best to beam at him, her smile still looked forced. Meanwhile, the Crown Prince had crossed his arms in front of him and leaned back against a pillar as he casually studied Feng Wu. With his great looks, his unhurried demeanor looked exceptionally attractive. Teehee, Feng Wu smiled awkwardly. This was so embarrassing. Only a moment ago, she was trying to steer clear of Jun Linyuan, but now, she needed his help again. Despite her reluctance, Feng Wu still slowly approached him. And the crowd? They exhaled in unison. She's turning around and going back. Why do you think she's doing that? It's obvious. She was trying to play hard to get, and thought His Royal Highness would stop her. But he didn't even say a word. That's right. Look, she's going back to His Royal Highness because of that. I don't think that's the case. His Royal Highness seems to really like her. No, he doesn't. She's like a toy to him, that's all. He'll play with her when he feels like it, and cast her aside when he doesn't. Most of the people saying those things were girls. They were jealous of Feng Wu, which affected their judgment. Naturally, they wouldn't say anything nice about her. Feng Wu heard them as well. But the system had given her the lousy task, so what choice did she have? She was a victim as well. Despite her torment, Feng Wu still had to keep smiling, which wasn't easy at all. Why, Your Royal Highness? Feng Wu inched forward until she reached him. The Crown Prince raised his eyebrows and smirked. His demeanor was so casual that he seemed to be enjoying a show. Feng Wu felt like screaming. This was so humiliating. However, She needed the broken star pieces, and had to force herself to smile. Your Royal Highness. Teehee. Jun Linyuan found the silly girl very amusing. He was convinced that she was infatuated with him, but she just wouldn't admit it. He wanted to see how much longer she could play hard to get. You're back again, he said sarcastically. Ahem. Fengwu cleared her throat and nodded. She looked incredibly docile. Chapter 1413. Jun Linyuan the Unmanageable 7. Chapter 1413. Jun Linyuan the Unmanageable 7. Little Fengwu. Jun Linyuan glanced at Fengwu. What on earth do you want? Fengwu immediately answered. I want your flowers. Everyone gave Fengwu odd looks as soon as she said that. Oh my god. Fengwu really is the boldest girl I've ever seen. Dugu Yamo only tried to give His Royal Highness her flowers, but Fengwu wants his flowers instead. Everyone knows what those flowers mean on a special day like this. I heard that the royal family wants to arrange a marriage with the Zhou family, and Zhou Qinghuan is the best candidate. That's right, I heard that too. Zhou Qinghuan is the one with the true phoenix blood. Fengwu is nothing in comparison. Fengwu is such a schemer. Zhou Qingyu tried to exaggerate the situation. She deliberately gave His Royal Highness those flowers, only to ask for them back later. That way, everyone will think that His Royal Highness gave her flowers. What a well-thought-out plan. Many people saw the light after they heard Zhou Qingyu's interpretation and started criticizing Fengwu. Soon, the news of Fengwu asking His Royal Highness for immortal flowers spread through the grove as if it had grown wings. Gossip involving famous people like Jun Linyuan and Fengwu traveled the fastest. Couldn't Fengwu hear all the discussion? Of course she could. Still, she had to force herself to defer to Jun Linyuan. Jun Linyuan's eyes flickered, and he gave Fengwu a half-smile. Are you asking for this bunch of flowers? He gave Fengwu a teasing look and waved the flowers in his hand. Yes. Fengwu stared eagerly at the immortal flowers and reached out. I've given it some thought, and decided that I shouldn't bother you. So how about I take those flowers back? Fengwu had formed a plan already. She was about to snatch them and flee the scene. However, the crown prince wasn't that easy to fool. You won't bother me? Jun Linyuan's pupils contracted. She had flirted with him first, and now, she wanted to take it back. Who did she think he was? A storm seemed to brew in his dark eyes. Yes, I'm sorry. Fengwu bit her lower lip and looked quite earnest. She grabbed Dugu Yamo's flowers and stuffed them into Jun Linyuan's arms. These are much nicer. Mine are already wilting, so I'll take them from here. Something dangerous shone in Jun Linyuan's eyes. The look reminded one of dark clouds in the sky. Fengwu felt a tremendous pressure on her shoulders. The chilly sensation made her tremble nonstop. It was freezing. His eyes were so frightening. Fengwu almost couldn't look into his infuriated eyes. I thought you didn't like my flowers, Fengwu said gingerly. Jun Linyuan smirked. The warmth in his eyes was gone, and they seemed to have turned into bottomless pits. Frost seemed to cover his handsome face, and his black eyebrows reminded one of swords out of their scabbards. Well, Fengwu didn't dare speak. Fengwu, do you like me that much? The crown prince asked unhurriedly. What? Chapter 1414. Jun Linyuan the Unmanageable 8. Chapter 1414. Jun Linyuan the Unmanageable 8. Fengwu was dumbfounded, and felt as if she had been struck by lightning. Looking up, she stared at Jun Linyuan in bewilderment, and her clear eyes were filled with innocence and confusion. Jun Linyuan's rosy lips curled into a half-smile, and he said, If you don't like me, why should I give you flowers? That was so true. All the onlookers gave Fengwu strange looks. Fengwu was speechless. She now knew what inexcusable meant. Huh. When the crown prince didn't hear her answer, he raised his eyebrows and gave Fengwu a goading look. What could Fengwu possibly say? She tried to explain herself. Well, it's actually not like that. Jun Linyuan slowly approached her with a cold smile on his face and asked, What is it then? Well, Despite the smile on her face, Fengwu was screaming inwardly. How was she supposed to know what the system wanted her to do? She was as confused as everyone else. If it's not like that, then explain yourself. The crown prince was usually uninterested in other people. But now, he was closing in with eyes that glinted coldly. Fengwu said, I just don't think these flowers are good enough for someone as elegant and graceful as you. So I want to take them back, and give you something more suitable another day. When will that be? The crown prince stared at Fengwu. It was only a random excuse. And of course, she didn't know when that would be. Damn you, Jun Linyuan. Fengwu cursed inwardly. She wondered why this man wouldn't leave her alone. But she couldn't lose her temper just yet, and had to maintain that adorable sweet smile. Grinding her teeth, Fengwu smiled. Your Royal Highness, are you really not going to give them to me? Jun Linyuan gave her a half-smile. Little Fengwu, are you really that in love with me? All Fengwu had to say was yes, and he would give her the flowers. However, Fengwu failed to recognize Jun Linyuan's insinuation, and she waved her hands in denial. No, I'm not in love with you at all. Jun Linyuan, please believe me. I don't have any feelings for you. Don't believe the rumors. Jun Linyuan's face immediately turned as dark as ink. Around them, everyone became so quiet that they could hear their breathing. The temperature seemed to drop. Fengwu eyed the flowers eagerly. Although she still had a whole day ahead of her, if Jun Linyuan refused to give her the flowers, there was nothing she could do. Moreover, what if Jun Linyuan decided to destroy the flowers? Fengwu had just jinxed herself. The moment that idea popped into her head, Jun Linyuan's slender fingers wrapped around the flowers. Shit! Fengwu's pupils contracted. Since the system had specified that she had to get those flowers back, she wouldn't be able to accept any other flowers. If Jun Linyuan destroyed them now, then her sixth trial would be. Fengwu couldn't bring herself to imagine her failure. Wait! Fengwu rushed over to him, and wrapped her hands around Jun Linyuan's wrist, so tightly that she almost gave him bruises. Those are my flowers. You can't destroy them. Fengwu glowered at Jun Linyuan. Jun Linyuan was baffled. Had he misunderstood something? If the girl cherished the flowers so much, how could she not be in love with him? Was Feng Sun correct in saying that she was being dishonest and playing hard to get? Were her physical reactions more trustworthy than her words? Chapter 14:15. Jun Linyuan the Unmanageable 9. Chapter 14:15. Jun Linyuan the Unmanageable 9. Fengwu was very good at reading faces. Seeing the fleeting hesitation in Jun Linyuan's eyes, she immediately pleaded with him. Please give me the flowers. Pretty please? Fengwu's voice had the natural sweetness of a child, which was accentuated when her tone softened further in making a request. Together with her big teary eyes and adorable expression, no man would be able to resist her. Even Jun Linyuan's heart skipped a beat seeing her like that. However, he was more resistant than most people, and soon returned to himself. No, he turned her down outright. Fengwu almost stomped her foot in frustration. This man was doing it on purpose. He could live without these flowers, but to her, they were more important than her life. Are these flowers very important to you? Jun Linyuan asked casually. Yes, they're more important than my life. Fengwu nodded. Feng Sun interjected. Of course they are. They're from Boss Jun, so they mean a lot more. Fengwu wanted to kick Feng Sun. Why wouldn't this guy keep his mouth shut? She didn't want to marry the crown prince. She was here to save her beautiful master. Jun Linyuan studied Fengwu with his bright brooding eyes, and his gaze was so intense. That look made Fengwu's heart skip a beat, and she found herself too scared to look up. Thump! Fengwu indeed kicked Feng Sun. Just keep your mouth shut. Rubbing his leg where she had kicked him, Feng Sun looked at her with teary eyes. I was only trying to speak your mind for you. If we do it your way, when will the two of you realize your mutual feelings? What feelings? Fengwu raised her hand at Feng Sun again. Feng Sun cried out and ran away saying, Fine. I won't say a word. Satisfied? Fengwu accidentally met Jun Linyuan's gaze, and the heat in his eyes almost burned her skin. She involuntarily looked away. She had to admit that Jun Linyuan was dangerously attractive. If she wasn't used to her beautiful master's charm, she thought she might be infatuated with Jun Linyuan like all the other girls. Since these flowers are so important to you. Flames seemed to burn in Jun Linyuan's eyes as he looked down at Feng Wu. Feng Wu's eyes lit up. She looked expectantly at Jun Linyuan and prayed that he would give them to her. But Jun Linyuan changed his tone. Of course, I can't give them to you so carelessly. Feng Wu. She was smiling on the outside but cursing in her head. Stomping her foot, she said, Jun Linyuan, you. The crown prince misunderstood when Feng Wu said that the flowers were more important than her life. He thought it proved that Feng Wu had feelings for him. He stopped being mad. Instead, he changed his mind and started teasing Feng Wu. If you want these flowers so badly, the crown prince gave her a meaningful look. I'm not saying you can't have them. Feng Wu's eyes lit up. Name your terms. She thumped her own chest. Eyes shining, Jun Linyuan smiled and said, Be my personal maid. What? Chapter 14:16. Jun Linyuan the Unmanageable 10. Chapter 14:16. Jun Linyuan the Unmanageable 10. Feng Wu glared at Jun Linyuan. Can't you propose something more reasonable? Forget it then. The crown prince turned to walk away. Don't go. Feng Wu immediately ran after him and grabbed him by the sleeve. Let's talk it out. We're in a tea house, aren't we? Let's sit down and negotiate. Feng Wu was ready for a long talk. She already felt a lot more relieved. She still had hope as long as Jun Linyuan was willing to talk to her. Things would be a lot worse if he wouldn't even name any terms. Jun Linyuan glanced at Feng Wu. She had proactively grabbed his sleeve before pressing on his shoulders, so that he sat down in a chair. She was determined to make him give her those flowers. Not only did Feng Wu sit down after that, she also poured some tea for both of them, as though she was ready for a long conversation. Her approach astonished a lot of people. The tea house was some distance away, so the crowd couldn't hear their exact words. But they could see their movements. They saw with their own eyes Feng Wu sitting the crown prince down opposite her. And they saw her pour him some tea, which he downed in one go. They also saw Feng Wu and the crown prince ready to start talking. More than jealousy, they felt envy. Many people asked themselves if they would be able to act so unperturbed in front of the crown prince if they were in Feng Wu's shoes. The answer was no. Their hearts would beat so fast as soon as they locked gazes with the crown prince, to say nothing of sitting down opposite him. This Feng Wu was really bold. Feng Wu had no idea what everyone else thought of her. Right now, her top priority was the 6th trial. I'm not saying I can't become your personal maid. Feng Wu smiled at Jun Linyuan. But only for a limited time. After all, I'm a student of Imperial College, and I have my own studies to worry about, right? The crown prince gave Feng Wu a casual look and raised a finger. A day. Feng Wu was elated. Jun Linyuan gave Feng Wu a you idiot look and said, A year. A year. Feng Wu flared up and smacked her hands on the table. No way. A year is out of the question. That's preposterous. Jun Linyuan, you can't be serious. Jun Linyuan was startled by her exasperation, but he still managed to keep his face very stern. What are your terms then? A day. Feng Wu also raised a finger. The crown prince even rolled his eyes at her. He rose to his feet and turned to leave. Feng Wu hastily stopped him. Hey, wait. Wait. Feng Wu stopped him. Don't rush off. Let's negotiate. You think? The crown prince glanced at Feng Wu. The difference between a day and a year was a little too big. How about this? 10 days. That's the best I can do. Feng Wu stared at Jun Linyuan and said, That's my bottom line and no more. A month. Jun Linyuan raised an eyebrow. 15 days. 20. 16. 19. 17. 18. Good 18 days it is then. Feng Wu smacked the table and sealed the deal. Just then. Chapter 14:17. Be My Little Maid, 1. Chapter 14:17. Be My Little Maid, 1. It was just serving June Linyuan, right? She would do anything to complete the 6th trial. June Linyuan looked into Feng Wu's eyes and was a little surprised by her prompt reply. Deal, he replied. Flowers, give me my flowers. Feng Wu eagerly reached out to him. Did she want his flowers so badly? The proud crown prince gave Feng Wu a half-smile. Seeing the way the girl gingerly held the flowers, and how much she seemed to like them, June Linyuan picked up some more from beside him and stuffed them into her hands. Take them all. Feng Wu was speechless. She only wanted her own bunch and wasn't interested in more, okay? However, she would still need June Linyuan's help before she finished all 12 trials of love. Therefore, she had to take the flowers and smile at him. June Linyuan glanced at Feng Wu. Happy now. Feng Wu was speechless. She was forced to accept something she didn't like and had to fake gratitude. What was worse, she had to endure all the sarcasm. It was awful. June Linyuan rose to his feet and strolled off. He only took a few steps before he paused, turned his head, and glanced at Feng Wu. Let's go. Feng Wu was dumbfounded. She suddenly realized that she had agreed to be June Linyuan's maid for 18 days, but... Is it starting now? Feng Wu frowned. What do you think? June Linyuan raised his eyebrows and turned to leave. Since half the day was already over, Feng Wu found it a sweet deal. At that thought, she happily followed him. The crowd watched as Feng Wu left with June Linyuan. And the looks on their faces were very strange. So, she's only going to be a maid. I thought she would become a consort at least, but she's only a maid. The way she recklessly rushed up to the crown prince. What would His Royal Highness think of her? She should feel very lucky to be his maid. All the girls who had considered Feng Wu a great threat mocked her now. Even Song Yichen and his friends felt conflicted. Zhao Xingji smirked. I thought His Royal Highness thought highly of Feng Wu, but after all the wrangling, she only became a maid. How preposterous. Is it? Xu Yunrua glanced at Zhao Xingji. If you were given that chance, would you turn it down? You. Zhao Xingji stared at Xu Yunrua. Watch your language. Zhao Xingji was 4th and Xu Yunrua was 5th. Whenever they had a conflict, Zhao Xingji would try to suppress Xu Yunrua with his higher ranking. Xu Yunrua only found him ridiculous. He was the heir of the Gongshu family, and he would usually ignore someone like Zhao Xingji, but... Do you really think His Royal Highness only considers Feng Wu a maid? He gave Zhao Xingji and the others a half-smile. Lying to yourselves is a foolish thing to do. After that, Xu Yunrua turned to leave. Song Yichen and the others traded embarrassed looks. When they thought about it, they realized that if given the chance to stay close to His Royal Highness, they would take it. No matter in what capacity, they would be over the moon. Feng Wu hence was indeed spectacular. Feng Sun and Xianni smiled at each other as they watched Feng Wu follow the arrogant crown prince. Chapter 14:18. Be my little maid too. Chapter 14:18. Be my little maid too. Feng Sun tugged at Xianni and asked, Don't you think Boss Jun has changed? Has he? Xianni sounded confused. Feng Sun said, Yes. Haven't you noticed? Boss Jun has been talking a lot more. Thinking about it, Xianni realized that Feng Sun was right. Feng Sun went on. And haven't you noticed that Boss Jun is a lot more expressive when he speaks? Xianni was still trying to think how June Linyuan had changed, when Feng Sun gave him an example. Before, Boss Jun would only say move in that cold way of his, but just then, he told Feng Wu let's go. Can't you tell the difference? Yes, but that only happens when he's around Feng Wu, Xianni said grumpily. Feng Sun gave it some thought, and realized that Xianni was right. Boss Jun was still as unapproachable and reticent as ever with other people. But he was a lot more considerate toward Feng Wu. Boss Jun couldn't care less about Feng Wu's life when we were in northern border city. Who could have known? Feng Sun sounded amazed. Meanwhile, Feng Wu was following behind June Linyuan. She couldn't tell if June Linyuan was doing it on purpose, but he was casually walking around the immortal flower grove with his hands behind his back. With his impressive height, straight back, exquisite features and excellent posture, he looked as imposing as a king. Feng Wu stayed an arm's length away from him the way a maid would. But the air in the immortal flower grove was suggestive enough. The sun was setting, and the light was growing dim. On the day of the Immortal Flower Festival, when the atmosphere felt right, couples might roll around in the bushes right there, and then. Therefore, Feng Wu felt embarrassed when she saw the rustling bushes on the side of the road. However, Jun Linyuan seemed completely unaware, and kept walking in that direction. How awkward would it be if he ran into those people? Feng Wu immediately quickened her steps, and grabbed Jun Linyuan by his sleeve. She warned him, "We should leave. Now." The crown prince seemed to be lost in thought, and Feng Wu's voice woke him up from his reverie. He then glanced at Feng Wu in bewilderment. Feng Wu grew anxious when Jun Linyuan stopped walking, and she tried to pull him away. "Are you dumb or what? Don't just stand there. Move." The crown prince was all about saving face, and no one had ever dared call him dumb. Thus, his rebellious side immediately flared up. Instead of turning around, he kept moving forward. "Hey! Stop right there." Feng Wu was exasperated. Even she knew what happened here in the bushes, during the Immortal Flower Festival. Unfortunately, the crown prince was walking too fast for Feng Wu to stop him. It just so happened that the couple was too absorbed in what they were doing to notice the approaching footsteps. Whoosh! The tall bushes were brushed aside to reveal two entwined bodies. By then, the young couple finally realized what was going on, and the girl shrieked. Feng Wu arrived at that moment. She put two spiritual stones on the ground and dragged Jun Linyuan away. The crown prince remained unperturbed and aloof, and one couldn't see any change in his expression. However, Feng Wu realized how stiff he had become when she dragged him off. She complained after they were out of the bushes. "Your Royal Highness, did you do that on purpose?" Jun Linyuan glared at Feng Wu with emotionless eyes. "Shut up." Chapter 1419, Be My Little Maid 3. Chapter 1419, Be My Little Maid 3. The crown prince was very frightening when he was like this. Feng Wu immediately quieted down. Fine. She would stop talking altogether. However, Feng Wu thought her head was going to explode when she saw the crown prince's scarlet-red earlobes. Jun Linyuan wouldn't be reacting this way if he was experienced. Judging by the way he was reacting, could he be? So, he was actually trying to cover up this embarrassment when he acted all nonchalant and unapproachable. Feng Wu looked at Jun Linyuan involuntarily, but it just so happened that he was looking in her direction as well. Their eyes met, and they could almost see sparks in the air. Feng Wu immediately looked away. So did the crown prince. The air seemed to freeze for a moment, and the embarrassment made them go stiff. In the end, Feng Wu used to be a modern woman, and was used to such things. Therefore, she soon returned to herself. She then stole a glance at Jun Linyuan. She realized that not only had Jun Linyuan's fair earlobes turned red, but his eyes couldn't stop darting around. Driven by curiosity, Feng Wu tugged at his sleeve and whispered, "Jun Linyuan, don't tell me you haven't seen such things before." The crown prince immediately stiffened, and there was a vexed look on his taut, handsome face. He threw a cold glance at Feng Wu before looking away. Oh my! Feng Wu had been a secret agent in her previous life, and she was an expert at reading faces. Therefore, "Jun Linyuan, are you a virgin?" Feng Wu didn't know where she found the courage, but she just poked her nose into Jun Linyuan's personal life. Jun Linyuan stiffened, and walked away without looking at Feng Wu. Wow! Feng Wu was thrilled. She felt as though she had discovered a whole new world, and couldn't wait to hear more gossip. Hey! Jun Linyuan walked very fast, and Feng Wu had to run after him. She looked up at him with sparkling eyes. "Have you never seen such things before? Don't you have a maid to warm your bed? Seriously? You're the crown prince." He was walking so fast that Feng Wu could barely catch up. She was panting as she ran. Feng Wu said grumpily, "Isn't that normal? Why are you avoiding the question? You look so nervous." Suddenly the crown prince stopped. Feng Wu, who was still rushing forward, bumped into his back. His back was so hard that Feng Wu thought she had broken her nose. That hurt. She almost burst into tears. Do you know a lot about it? There was a murderous look on his face as he looked down at her with his cold eyes. All Feng Wu could feel was pain. Tears had welled up in her eyes as she stared at him innocently. What? Do you know a lot about such things? The crown prince frowned and sounded very intimidating. Well, Feng Wu was speechless. What should she say? Such things were quite common in modern society. Even if she hadn't done it herself, she had still seen her fair share. However, she then saw Jun Linyuan's taut face and his clenched fists. The bulging purple veins were evidence of how furious he was. Who taught you those things? The look on his face reminded her of a demon. Feng Wu stammered, well, I only heard some things. I don't really know much about it. I don't. Trust me. Chapter 1420, Be My Little Maid 4. Chapter 1420, Be My Little Maid 4. Feng Wu wanted to smack her own head. Why did she have to be so nosy and ask after the teenager's private life? Now she became the one who was at a loss over what to say. Jun Linyuan didn't say anything, but he was looking in another direction. A man was standing there, waiting for instructions. It was none other than Feng himself. Feng nodded, indicating that he had received the order. Feng Wu was dumbfounded as the master and servant reached a tacit agreement. She had no idea what was going on. But Jun Linyuan didn't care if she understood or not. He picked her up and marched off. Hey Jun Linyuan, what are you doing? I have legs. I can walk on my own. Let go of me. Of course, the crown prince wouldn't let go of her. He wanted to pry her head open and find out what was inside. The crown prince's residence. A lot of servants worked in the residence, and they all seemed to have been specially trained. Everyone walked swiftly and quietly without stopping for a second. The crown prince liked things quiet, and he wanted the servants to stay out of sight. Therefore, the wide and even paths of the residence were usually deserted. News came from the tower building that His Royal Highness's carriage was about to arrive. Granny Gong immediately went out to greet him with hot towels. The crown prince was a neat freak, and with all the dust outside, the first thing he always did when he arrived home was to clean his hands. However, as Granny Gong laid out the hot water and towels, she saw the dark-faced crown prince quickly walk into the house with a person in his arms. Jun Linyuan soon walked inside, leaving everyone behind. The servant blinked in bewilderment as the crown prince walked away. Granny Gong. A maid next to Granny Gong spoke, and she sounded displeased. I thought His Royal Highness always cleans his hands first before going inside. Why not today? The crown prince acted as if they didn't exist. Granny Gong glanced at the maid. The Empress Dowager had sent over a few maids the other day, and had left specific instructions that Bishi here should work as the crown prince's chambermaid. Of course, Granny Gong didn't dare do that. She could only have Bishi stay close to her, so that she could see the crown prince often enough. Maybe she would get noticed one day that way. But Granny Gong felt that the chances were very low. She had to admit that Bishi was indeed very pretty. But Granny Gong shook her head with a wry smile. She was only pretty, not stunning. Compared with Feng Wu, Bishi was nothing. Seeing the ambitious look on Bishi's face, Granny Gong shook her head. Granny Gong, His Royal Highness hasn't washed his hands yet. Let me bring these to him. After that, Bishi casually took the towels and had a younger maid pick up the hot water. Granny Gong stared at her with a dark face. Stop right there. Granny Gong. Bishi gave her an arrogant glance. Before she came here, the Empress Dowager told her that she was a blessed girl. If she could give birth to a boy, she could become one of the crown prince's senior concubines. If she could become a senior concubine, there was a chance she could become an imperial consort in the future. Granny Gong could sell the other maids however she wanted, but Bishi was someone the Empress Dowager had high hopes for. Staring at her with cold eyes, Granny Gong told a younger maid to snatch the towels back. If you want to live, you'll have to be a lot more obedient. After that. Chapter 1421, Be My Little Maid 5. Chapter 1421, Be My Little Maid 5. Granny Gong led the others away, leaving Bishi behind. Bishi looked unconvinced. She was confident that once the crown prince saw her, he would be attracted by her beauty. Feng Wu had no idea that an ambitious girl had arrived at the crown prince's residence. Thump! The crown prince casually threw Feng Wu onto the soft bed, after he walked into his study. Rubbing her arms, which were hurting from being carried around, Feng Wu glared at Jun Linyuan. The crown prince closed the door behind him when he walked in, and ignored Feng Wu after that. Feng Wu simply found him ridiculous. Why was Jun Linyuan doing this? She had only teased him over how innocent he was. Did he have to be so angry? She decided that she would ignore him as well. Instead of getting up, she slouched back on the soft bed and turned her back on Jun Linyuan. Probably exhausted by the day's events, Feng Wu gradually felt her eyelids grow heavy. In the end, she fell asleep. When she woke up, it was 2 hours later. She sat up, holding the duvet and rubbing her sleepy eyes. The warm candlelight on the wall gradually reminded her of today's events. She recalled everything that had happened in the Immortal Flower Grove today. The fact that Jun Linyuan had snatched her, and she fell asleep when she was still mad at Jun Linyuan. How incredible! Feng Wu patted her own head in frustration. She then turned her head and looked around. She saw Jun Linyuan working at his table. In the dim light, she saw his profile, with his chiseled jaw and deep-set features. He wore a thin robe with a heavy cape over his shoulders, looking elegant and majestic. He was reading a memorial to the throne. Feng Wu knew that Jun Linyuan was raised as the future heir to the throne. It was common knowledge that being the crown prince was the most difficult job in the world. Because of their tenure, all emperors held complicated and conflicted feelings toward their crown princes. An emperor would feel threatened if the crown prince was too active and became too popular among the officials. But if the crown prince was too mediocre, the emperor would doubt if he was suitable for the job. And it became even harder for the crown prince if the emperor lived to a very old age. All crown princes hence trod on thin ice and lived difficult lives. However, Jun Linyuan was quite comfortable in his role. He had a short temper, could be arrogant or cruel at times, and would do whatever he wanted without any scruples. Despite that, the officials thought highly of him, the commoners admired him, and even the emperor himself couldn't do anything about his willfulness. Feng Wu felt that compared with Jun Linyuan, Emperor Wu looked more like a wronged little wife, while his son was the great fiend. Resting her chin on one hand, Feng Wu studied Jun Linyuan's well-defined face with her curious twinkling eyes. The crown prince was reading a memorial to the throne. Since he was the crown prince, he would receive copies of all the memorials to the throne. He was a very fast reader, and it only took him a quick glance to memorize the content. State affairs that would take Emperor Wu 10 hours to sort through would only take Jun Linyuan 1 hour, and he was able to give advice afterward. Handling state affairs was a walk in the park. However, instead of quickly going through the memorial to the throne this time, he was stuck on a line and couldn't turn a page. Chapter 1422. Be My Little Maid 6. Chapter 1422. Be My Little Maid 6. Because Feng Wu was staring at him. With his keen senses, he had been aware of Feng Wu's gaze as soon as she woke up. For some unknown reason, the girl kept staring at him, as if she was trying to solve a puzzle. Under her gaze, the crown prince felt the temperature in his cheeks rise, and somehow, he was reminded of what he had seen in the bushes earlier. But this time, the girl had Feng Wu's face. When he realized what was going on, Jun Linyuan felt like he had been struck by lightning. What on earth was he thinking? Thump. Frustrated, Jun Linyuan smashed his fist on the table. The impact sent all the memorials to the throne to the floor. Feng Wu jumped at the noise as well. What's wrong? Before she knew it, Feng Wu had rushed over to Jun Linyuan's side. The memorials had fallen all over the floor, as if they were common letters. But so many things were at stake in each and every one. This was the political center of the empire, and the slightest change could have the greatest impact. Feng Wu was even more confused when she saw how frustrated Jun Linyuan looked. Jun Linyuan you. However, the crown prince shoved Feng Wu to the side and marched out of the room. Before Feng Wu could say anything, Jun Linyuan was out of sight. She was dumbfounded. What on earth happened? Feng Wu shook her head in resignation, and couldn't for the life of her think of an explanation. But she didn't linger on the question. She looked around, and saw all the memorials scattered on the floor, as if they were garbage. What a willful crown prince. Crouching down, she picked up all the memorials, sorted them out, and put them back on the desk. Just then, there was a gentle tap on the door. What? Feng Wu was surprised. She had been here at the crown prince's residence many times, but she couldn't recall anyone daring to disturb Jun Linyuan. Certainly no one had dared knock on his door. Feng Wu opened the door out of curiosity. A beautiful young woman stood outside with a tray, which had a bowl on it. The content looked like was that white fungus soup with lotus seeds? Feng Wu remembered that Jun Linyuan hated sticky soup like this. The girl wore the thinnest dress Feng Wu had ever seen. It consisted of a single layer of gauze, which did nothing to hide her curves. You're royal. Before Bishi could finish greeting the crown prince, she saw that the person in front of her was a girl. While Feng Wu was looking her up and down, she was doing the same. You! Bishi reacted first, and she was full of jealousy when she stared at Feng Wu. She was so beautiful. Her beauty was stunning, not to mention her fair skin was impeccable. She was still young and hadn't reached her potential, but her innocence reminded one of the spring sun, the morning dew, and the beauty of life. Bishi was very displeased. She glared at Feng Wu. Who are you and what are you doing here? Aren't all maids forbidden to come here to the study? How did you get in? Bishi's eyes lit up when she saw the memorials in Feng Wu's hands, and she yelled, Guards! Guards! There's an assassin here. Come here. Security was the top priority in the crown prince's residence, and there were guards everywhere. Therefore, hearing Bishi's cry, Chapter 1423 Pretty Slave. Chapter 1423 Pretty Slave. She glared at Feng Wu. Who are you, and what are you doing here? Aren't all maids forbidden to come here to the study? How did you get in? Bishi's eyes lit up when she saw the memorials in Feng Wu's hands, and she yelled, Guards! Guards! There's an assassin here. Come here. Security was the top priority in the crown prince's residence, and there were guards everywhere. Therefore, hearing Bishi's cry, everyone was instantly alarmed, and several people rushed toward the study. Seeing them, Bishi shouted, Come over here! Quickly! This woman broke into His Royal Highness's study. She must be a mole. Catch her. No, kill her. All the secret guards around the study, and posted throughout the residence, were very loyal to Jun Linyuan. They took orders from him, and no one else. To them, Feng Wu wasn't an acquaintance, but she wasn't a stranger either, as she had visited the residence a few times already. Thus, the leader of the guard seemed slightly displeased when he saw that Feng Wu was the assassin. Bishi said hastily, Take her down. Now. However, the leader only cast a stern look at Bishi before walking away. That look made Bishi shudder. The next thing she knew, the leader was leaving. Hey Lu Xian, why are you leaving? Shouldn't you arrest her? Aren't you afraid that His Royal Highness will punish you? Bishi and Lu Xian both grew up in the imperial palace, and their paths had crossed when they were little. While Bishi was sent away to learn how to please men, Lu Xian went on to learn martial arts. This was their first meeting after growing up. Even though Bishi recognized him, Lu Xian didn't stop. He quickly led his men back to their positions. Hey! Infuriated, Bishi shouted after him. The residence was very quiet after dark, so much so that one could hear leaves falling from the trees. Bishi's voice hence sounded very out of place. Soon Granny Gong arrived in a hurry. What's going on here? Her face was livid. The crown prince's residence ran smoothly under her supervision. All the servants did their jobs properly, and no one made any unnecessary sounds. This Bishi had been disobeying the rules, just because she had been sent here from the imperial palace by the Empress Dowager herself, and Granny Gong had been enduring her behavior until now. Seeing Granny Gong, Bishi quickly walked up to her and tried to take her arm. However, Granny Gong drew her hand back and stared at Bishi. Granny Gong. Bishi pursed her lips, pointed at Feng Wu and whined. This woman is a mole. She was tampering with His Royal Highness's memorials. She's after court secrets. We have to take her down before she escapes. Granny Gong stared at Bishi and found her an utter idiot. However, Bishi had no idea how foolish her accusation was. Instead, she tried to make up more stories. Granny Gong, I'm telling the truth. She was trying to steal the memorials. She really was. Granny Gong had had enough of her idiotic speech. Do you know who she is? Bishi looked dumbfounded. The answer was obviously no. Who is she? Isn't she some slave His Royal Highness brought back? And this slave was too pretty to be real. Chapter 1424. What if I say no? Chapter 1424. What if I say no? Granny Gong was speechless. A slave? Granny Gong wanted to laugh out loud. She was about to say something when she realized a serious problem. Last time when she was at court, the Empress Dowager had probed around, asking what the relationship between the Crown Prince and Feng Wu was like, and if they were frequently in contact with each other. It was obvious that she didn't like Feng Wu. Afterward, she gifted Jun Linyuan with a few teenage girls, like Bishi, who had been trained to please men. Granny Gong remembered that the Empress Dowager used to give Jun Linyuan women before, but she stopped after he threw a tantrum. But now it was starting again. Intuition told Granny Gong that she should keep the Crown Prince and Feng Wu's relationship from Bishi, because Bishi had direct access to the Empress Dowager. Moreover, Granny Gong had also learned that Bishi was from an influential family and had a well-connected father. Therefore, at that thought, Granny Gong threw a dirty look at Bishi and said, "Get her out of here." Bishi's eyes widened, and she stared at Granny Gong in disbelief. Granny Gong, are you serious? Get me out of here? You should arrest her and execute her. At Granny Gong's command, some servants took Bishi by the arms, but she struggled violently. She made all sorts of threats as she struggled. Granny Gong, why are you on her side? Are you on her payroll or what? You're a team, aren't you? Granny Gong rubbed her forehead. She couldn't for the life of her figure out how someone as stupid as Bishi could have survived in court, let alone be selected by the Empress Dowager. No matter how loudly she yelled, Granny Gong only ignored her. Miss Feng, sorry about the disturbance. Granny Gong apologized to Feng Wu. Feng Wu waved at Granny Gong, as if the little incident didn't bother her. By the way, Granny Gong looked up and a pretty young maid walked over with a tray. Granny Gong then smiled at Feng Wu. Miss Feng, I need a little favor from you. Feng Wu glanced at the tray that was covered with a red cloth, and was confused. Granny Gong, what's this about? Granny Gong smiled. Her Majesty the Empress Dowager sent us this cooling soap as a gift, and His Royal Highness can really use it right now. So Miss Feng, would you please take it inside? Inside? Where? Feng Wu seemed alarmed. Granny Gong smiled. The bath hall, of course. Feng Wu frowned. Granny Gong, this is such a precious gift. Don't you think you should handle it yourself? Granny Gong smiled and said, Miss Feng, since you'll have to go inside anyway, why don't you take it with you? Feng Wu stared at Granny Gong. I'm going inside. Says who? That's not going to happen. Granny Gong seemed confused. But it's His Royal Highness's order. Feng Wu was speechless. Jun Linyuan just wouldn't let a day pass without making her life miserable. Feng Wu said, What did His Royal Highness say? Granny Gong smiled at Feng Wu. His Royal Highness said that since you're his personal maid now, you'll have to do all the intimate things a personal maid is supposed to do. Feng Wu asked, All the intimate things? Granny Gong nodded. Feng Wu asked, What if I say no? Granny Gong chuckled. No one in this world has ever dared defy His Royal Highness. So Miss Wu, don't act like a baby. Just hurry up. Act like a baby? Feng Wu rolled her eyes. When did she ever act like a baby? What if I refuse? Feng Wu gritted her teeth. Chapter 1425, Young Tigress. Chapter 1425, Young Tigress. Granny Gong was still smiling. Miss Wu, I think you know what His Royal Highness is capable of. Feng Wu rested her hands on her waist and stuck out her chest. I'm not afraid of him. Granny Gong smiled. I know you're not, but what about your family? By the way, I forgot to tell you. Miss Wu, while you're with His Royal Highness, young Master Qi will be staying with the Imperial Guards. Feng Wu narrowed her eyes in an intimidating way. How dare Jun Linyuan touch her family? Feng Wu smiled coldly. She then snatched the tray from the maid and charged into the bath hall with the cooling soap. Meanwhile, a pair of eyes stared at Feng Wu from a distance. The look in those eyes was a mix of jealousy and cold hatred. Thump! Feng Wu kicked the door open and charged in. Hot steam filled the room, and the heat blew into her face. Through the coiling steam, she saw Jun Linyuan sitting in the hot spring and leaning against the edge. She could see his fair chest and exquisite collarbones. He raised his eyebrows when he heard the noise. Feng Wu marched to his side and glared at him. Jun Linyuan seemed to have anticipated her anger, so he was able to keep his expression completely unperturbed. How did you get in here? He glanced casually at her. Feng Wu found him ridiculous. He had forced her to come here by taking Xiaoqi, but now, he was asking why she was here. You know perfectly well why I'm here. Resting her hands on her waist, Feng Wu glowered. The crown prince looked perfectly innocent when he raised his chin. How am I supposed to know that? Fine. Feng Wu glared at him. If you don't need me here, I'm off. She then marched back toward the door. However, just before she stepped out, the open door slammed shut with a loud bang. Feng Wu had run so fast that she almost bumped her nose on the door. Luckily, she reacted in time and stopped herself with a hand. Enraged, she turned around and glared at Jun Linyuan. The crown prince looked as innocent as before, and was even in the mood to play with the water. Feng Wu was so angry that her brain almost stopped working. She ran up to Jun Linyuan and said angrily, You did that on purpose. Jun Linyuan nodded lazily. Feng Wu was furious. You actually nodded? Feng Wu pointed at Jun Linyuan. You force me to come here, but won't talk to me when I'm in the room. Nor will you allow me to leave. Jun Linyuan, what on earth do you want? Only Jun Linyuan could make Feng Wu so angry. Hearing Feng Wu's question, he relaxed and gave Feng Wu an indifferent glance. Yes, what was that supposed to mean? Feng Wu wanted to smack his head. Jun Linyuan, you're threatening me with Xiaoqi's safety. How dare you? The more Feng Wu thought about it, the angrier she got. She was usually a very calm person, and no one ever saw her like this. She was always so composed and unperturbed. But somehow, she always turned into a jumpy tigress whenever Jun Linyuan was around. The crown prince was amused when he saw how agitated the girl was. She always looked as if nothing could affect her, and number 13-year-old girl should look like that. Chapter 1426. I can keep my word. Chapter 1426. I can keep my word. Therefore, the crown prince felt very proud to be able to make her lose control. Come here. Despite how he felt, his expression still remained arrogant and undisturbed. Ha! Feng Wu smirked. Explain yourself. Otherwise, I'll never let this drop. What did you do to Xiaoqi? Tell me. Jun Linyuan smiled. Little Feng Wu, whether he'll get his ass kicked or enjoy some quality cultivation time, will depend on how you behave in the next 18 days. Got it? Feng Wu clenched her fists. Blue veins popped in the corner of her forehead, and smoke practically rose out of her head. How could someone be so abominable? So, are you going to honor our deal or not? Throwing his head back, the crown prince downed the wine in his amber glass and glanced at Feng Wu. Feng Wu was about to answer, when the fairy spoke in her head. Master, wait. Feng Wu's stomach lurched whenever the fairy spoke, and she always got a bad feeling. The fairy said in a frustrated voice, Master, I have bad news. That made Feng Wu jump. The fairy wailed, The 6th trial has stopped moving forward. What? Feng Wu frowned. What happened? Haven't I finished that trial already? She remembered clearly that she had to give Jun Linyuan the flowers for the 5th trial, and he had to give them back for the 6th. She had already taken those flowers, so why had it stopped moving forward? She then heard the fairy's voice. Master, the 6th trial is only 99% complete and what? And it has been extended to 18 days. Fengwu was speechless. She realized what was going on. The duration of this trial had just been extended to 18 days because of her deal with Jun Linyuan. That was to say, if she failed to work as Jun Linyuan's personal maid for the next 18 days, she would fail the trial as well. How could this happen? Fengwu looked frustrated and was sure that the system had something against her. Why was it acting like a stepmother and treating her this way? Just then, she heard Jun Linyuan's arrogant voice. If you don't want the job, so many people can't wait to take your place. Leave then, he said without hesitation. Fengwu looked at Jun Linyuan with teary eyes. If the system was her stepmother, it was definitely Jun Linyuan's loving biological mother. I can keep my word. I won't be seen as an untrustworthy person. Fengwu clenched her fists and opened her big black eyes very wide. She looked like she was going to cry. The crown prince gave a small smile which quickly disappeared, but Fengwu was too vexed to notice. Scrub my back, the crown prince prompted her. Fine. Fengwu reluctantly inched toward him, fetched a clean towel, and was going to scrub his back. But, Fengwu, is that how you serve your master? The crown prince said. What now? Jun Linyuan said. Can't you see 5 bath towels on the shelf? Fengwu nodded. I did see them. They're all made from different fabrics and are in different sizes. Chapter 1427. I want to tell you. Chapter 1427. I want to tell you. Didn't Granny Gong teach you what to do? You use the phoenix towel for the first wash, the bath towel for the second, and for the third. Gosh, you can't possibly be serious. Fengwu cut him off. Even as a girl, I only use a single washcloth when I take a bath. Why do you use a different cloth for each wash? Don't you find that redundant? The crown prince pouted a little. That was how Granny Gong had taught his servants since he was little. Fengwu went on. Plus, this first one is made of high-quality cloud satin, which is a tribute from the Boda tribe, and the second is a tribute from the Wuming tribe. Jun Linyuan, please don't tell me that you wash your face with all these towels. Jun Linyuan bit his lower lip. Fengwu said, these 5 pieces of cloth alone are worth tens of thousands of gold taels. And that's as valuable as 10 top-grade spiritual stones. Jun Linyuan, you're so wasteful. Turning around, Jun Linyuan frowned when he saw Fengwu putting the used towels back onto the shelf. What are you doing? Fengwu said. Obviously I'm putting back the used ones so that Granny Gong can fetch them later and have them washed. Wash them? The idea had never occurred to Jun Linyuan, and he gave Fengwu a strange look. What needs to be washed? What needs to be washed? Fengwu also gave Jun Linyuan a strange look. These towels need to be cleaned before they can be used again, don't they? The crown prince stared at Fengwu, as if he was looking at a mad person. He had to reassure himself that she wasn't insane before he frowned and said, throw them away. What? Fengwu's eyes widened. She even stuck her fingers in her ears to clean them out. Am I hearing things? I'm not going to repeat myself again. Throw them away. The crown prince's face darkened. Fengwu jumped to her feet. Jun Linyuan, what's wrong with you? These are very expensive materials sent here by various tribes as tribute. You can't buy them anywhere. You're throwing them away after one use. The crown prince said, yep. Fengwu almost choked. Do you know that these 5 pieces are worth at least 10 top-grade spiritual stones? Jun Linyuan said proudly, yes. Fengwu said, 10 top-grade spiritual stones. People out there can bash each other's head in for a mere low-grade spiritual stone. And you're throwing away 10 top-grade ones after each bath. The crown prince said confidently, that's because I'm the crown prince. So that was how a crown prince was supposed to be treated. Fengwu didn't know what to say. She vented her sarcasm quietly. Why should they bother fighting over a low-grade spiritual stone, if they can just go digging in the trash can of the Crown Prince's residence. The Crown Prince glanced at Feng Wu and said, "They'll be burned. Nothing will get out." Feng Wu was speechless. It had to be done. Otherwise, it was possible that people would pay hundreds of top-grade spiritual stones for a bath towel that had been used by Jun Linyuan. Some comparisons just couldn't be made. After Jun Linyuan's retort, Feng Wu couldn't be bothered to talk to him anymore. She lowered her head and focused on scrubbing his back. Scars crisscrossed over Jun Linyuan's fair skin. Some were from whips, some were left by swords, and some were from other weapons. Feng Wu knew that there had to be a complicated story behind each one. But she also knew that the more she knew, the more danger she would be in. Therefore, she remained silent. Instead, Jun Linyuan casually asked, "Aren't you curious?" Still scrubbing his back with her head lowered, Feng Wu asked, "About what?" "Aren't you curious why a crown prince has so many scars on him?" Jun Linyuan seemed to be in the mood to chat again. Chapter 1428. Feng Wu, you're so annoying. Chapter 1428. Feng Wu, you're so annoying. However, Jun Linyuan had found the wrong person to talk to. If Feng Wu wanted to get to know Jun Linyuan better and see into his soul, now would be the best chance. However, Feng Wu dreaded the thought. The last thing she wanted to do was to know Jun Linyuan better, because he was so terrifying. She had a premonition that if she got involved with him, he would trouble her for the rest of her life. Hence, Feng Wu declined outright. "No, please say no more. I don't want to hear it." The Crown Prince immediately stiffened. He wouldn't be so mad if Feng Wu had been a bit more tactful. But she was so straightforward. Feng Wu could sense his muscles stiffen under her palms. Hot steam had been rising out of the pool and filling the air. But at that moment, it turned into frost and the bubbling hot spring started to freeze up. Crack. Ice spread out over the pool as Feng Wu watched. She was alarmed by a sense of extreme danger. Instinctively, she started moving backward. However, she barely took a step before Jun Linyuan grabbed her hand. Thump. Poor Feng Wu. Jun Linyuan pulled her down into the pool before she could put up a fight. It wouldn't be so bad if the water was warm, but it had already frozen. Crack. Flung out. Feng Wu landed on her back with a thump, the impact from hitting the ice sending a sharp pain down her spine. However, before she could return to her senses, Jun Linyuan had already grabbed her hand. Feng Wu was still feeling dizzy when she was forced to meet Jun Linyuan's furious eyes. His eyes were bloodshot and had a murderous look in them. And that wasn't the most terrifying part. Right now, Jun Linyuan looked like a king of magical beasts who had lost his mind and was ready to charge out. No one knew what such a destructive creature could do. Feng Wu's pupils contracted. There was fear and reverence in her eyes, but more than that, there was confusion. Jun Linyuan, what are you doing? Feng Wu's voice trembled a little. Jun Linyuan's face was livid, and the bulging blue veins on the back of his hands looked like they were going to explode at any moment. He was furious, but she still didn't know why. The idea only made the Crown Prince angrier. Feng Wu, are you trying to give me a stroke? Are you really so ignorant, or are you pretending to be innocent? Do you have any idea how I? He stopped abruptly, before he could finish the sentence. He couldn't say it now. The first one to express their feelings lost. He would never allow himself to be the loser. Jun Linyuan lost control for a moment and tightened his grip. Ouch, that hurts. Feng Wu thought her bones were going to break, and the pain brought tears to her eyes. Jun Linyuan only came back to his senses a little when he saw Feng Wu's tears. He looked down and saw Feng Wu's hand. Her hands had always been so fair and impeccable, but now, there was a heavy bruise around her wrist. Angry and frustrated, Jun Linyuan threw a dirty look at Feng Wu, and finally let go of her hand. Feng Wu was instinctively afraid of Jun Linyuan, and she immediately took a step back. Jun Linyuan frowned and was displeased. Why did she keep running away from him? Was he that frightening? He yelled at Feng Wu, "Stop right there." Chapter 1429 Eavesdropping. Chapter 1429 Eavesdropping. Feng Wu jumped out of the pool and ran toward the door at top speed. She was running away. Infuriated, Jun Linyuan jumped out of the pool as well. Feng Wu was more level-headed in a critical moment like this, so when she ran for the door, she picked up both Jun Linyuan's dirty and clean clothes. Only after she rushed outside with all the clothes did Jun Linyuan realize that he was half-naked when he was almost at the door. Exasperated, he bellowed, "Damn you! Get back here!" Feng Wu only heaved a sigh of relief when she saw that Jun Linyuan had stopped inside. Still holding the clothes, she turned around and made a face. "I won't. Catch me if you can." Jun Linyuan yelled. "Feng Wu, do you have a death wish?" Feng Wu said, "Come and get me." Jun Linyuan said, "What makes you think I won't?" Feng Wu said, "What are you waiting for then?" Jun Linyuan was so furious that he almost laughed. Gritting his teeth, he said, "Little Feng Wu, I'm going to give you one last chance." Feng Wu grinned. "You can keep the chance. What can you possibly do to me?" What were Feng and Granny Gong doing when the young couple was bickering? While the Crown Prince's residence was very spacious, it was usually very quiet. Therefore, the slightest noise was very obvious. How could Feng and Granny Gong not notice the quarrel between Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan? They ran out of their rooms as soon as they heard it. However, they stopped abruptly when they turned a corner, because they could clearly hear the two teenagers' voices. Sure enough, they heard the childish quarrel. Feng and Granny Gong were both speechless. They couldn't begin to describe what they were feeling right now. She was the new star of the imperial capital, someone who had risen again after her downfall, while he was the arrogant crown prince, as well as a formidable warrior. They were both very sensitive about their reputations when they were around other people, but now, they were fighting like two kids. Feng cleared his throat. Ahem. Deep down, His Royal Highness is still a child. Granny Gong rubbed her forehead. His Royal Highness was never like this. Feng rubbed his chin and said calmly, "That's because he had yet to meet the right opponent." Granny Gong agreed. It seemed that the Crown Prince only behaved this way when he was around Feng Wu. But she was still worried. "Are you sure this is good for His Royal Highness?" Feng glanced at Granny Gong. "Why not? His Royal Highness never smiled when he was little. By the time he turned 3, he already looked like a 60-year-old. Too many people placed too many expectations on him when he was growing up, and he's always been under more pressure than anyone can imagine. Isn't it nice to have someone who can turn him into a child once again?" Granny Gong still wanted to say something, but Feng cut her off. Plus, cultivation is all about a balance between tension and relaxation. His Royal Highness has been under a lot of stress for so many years. A little relaxation may do him good. That immediately persuaded Granny Gong, and she nodded. "That's true. If that's the case, Miss Feng Wu has done us a great favor." While Feng and Granny Gong were enjoying the show, someone else was standing in a corner 100 meters away. Bishi wasn't allowed to go near the hot spring, and had to eavesdrop from afar. Chapter 1430 No. I won't give them to you. Humph. Chapter 1430 No. I won't give them to you. Humph. Seeing the way Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan bickered, and how agitated the Crown Prince was, Bishi clenched her fists in jealousy. Other people might think that Jun Linyuan and Feng Wu were quarreling, but Bishi had been learning such things since she was little, and she knew better. With His Royal Highness's temperament, if he didn't like a person, all he needed to do was flip a sleeve, and they would be annihilated. There was no need to quarrel. Therefore, if a girl could bring out the Crown Prince's childish side, she had to be very special to him. Her Majesty the Empress Dowager had to know about this. At that thought, Bishi quietly retreated. Meanwhile, Feng Wu had no idea that someone else had seen her little confrontation with Jun Linyuan. She was too busy driving Jun Linyuan crazy. "Nope. I'm not giving them back to you." "Humph," Feng Wu said proudly. "Show yourselves already. Are you waiting for an invitation?" Jun Linyuan yelled at a corner. Feng Wu turned around to see Feng and Granny Gong step out of their hiding place. Feng Wu wept inwardly. At her current cultivation level, she indeed wasn't capable enough to detect them. Feng and Granny Gong looked straight ahead when they walked past Feng Wu, but Granny Gong still took the clothes away from her. Jun Linyuan gave Feng Wu a threatening look. Just wait and see. You big baby. Feng Wu stuck out her tongue at him, before jumping onto the wall and trying to dash off. However, this was the Crown Prince's residence. With the Crown Prince's permission, Feng Wu could go wherever she wanted. But if he wouldn't give that permission, ouch! Feng Wu jumped onto the wall, only to see a dark shadow moving quickly toward her. Before she knew it, she fell down and hit the ground with a loud thump. The fully dressed Crown Prince strolled to her side. Crouching down, he studied her with a complacent look in his twinkling eyes. The next second, he caught Feng Wu's chin with his slender, fair fingers. Feng Wu glared at him. Jun Linyuan, you had help. That's not fair. Jun Linyuan only smirked. Is that so? Thinking that she had turned things around, Feng Wu nodded repeatedly. Yes, Jun Linyuan said. So what? Feng Wu was dumbfounded. Ah, Jun Linyuan said. This is the Crown Prince's residence, and they're all my people. So what if I had help? Feng Wu stammered. You. Jun Linyuan snorted and rose to his feet. Tidy her up. She looks like a dirty little beggar now. He promptly turned to leave after that, as if Feng Wu was just a discarded doll. If Granny Gong and Feng didn't know that Jun Linyuan had feelings for Feng Wu, they really would think that he didn't like her. Tell her that she's cooking dinner tonight. Jun Linyuan had Granny Gong pass on his command instead. Obviously, he was still mad at her for what she did earlier. Is it your Royal Highness's dinner or? Granny Gong asked. Jun Linyuan gave Granny Gong a sidelong glance. The entire residence, obviously. No one is allowed to help her. He walked away after that. Granny Gong frowned. Cooking dinner for the entire Crown Prince's residence was a lot of work. Things were getting complicated. At that thought, Granny Gong gave Feng Wu a sympathetic glance. Miss Wu. Feng Wu waved her off. Granny Gong, just tell me, how many people are there in the residence? Chapter 1431. I'm Jun Linyuan's least favorite person. Chapter 1431. I'm Jun Linyuan's least favorite person. Feng Wu looked at Granny Gong. Granny Gong, please tell me how many people there are in the residence. Granny Gong looked at Feng Wu sympathetically. In total, 3,000. Feng Wu drew in her breath. That many? Granny Gong smiled wryly. That's already fewer than before. A lot more people used to work here. But His Royal Highness didn't like all the noise, so he let a lot of them go. Miss Wu, as you know, His Royal Highness is the heir to the throne and our future emperor. There are bound to be a lot of servants here. Feng Wu rubbed her forehead. She had just disrespected the future emperor. She should count herself very lucky to still be alive. She had to cook for 3,000 people now. There are requirements for the meals here, right? Feng Wu asked. Granny Gong gave her a sympathetic look. Yes, His Royal Highness's dinner consists of 30 dishes, and dinner for the stewards consists of 10, and after that. Feng Wu listened in astonishment. Forget the stewards and servants. Jun Linyuan's dinner alone would be a lot of work. It was unbelievable. Feng Wu asked Granny Gong. And when do you usually have dinner? Granny Gong gave her another sympathetic look. You only have 2 hours left. Feng Wu almost fainted. Granny Gong nodded. Yes, Miss Wu. You'll have to prepare tens of thousands of dishes in 2 hours. This mission was impossible. There were over 100 chefs and assistants in the kitchen here. Feng Wu pulled a long face. Jun Linyuan gave me an impossible job. Granny Gong and the maids around her all nodded. That was more than impossible. He was purposely making her life miserable. Feng Wu lowered her head in frustration. Granny Gong said sympathetically, Miss Wu, how about you talk to His Royal Highness? He's always been nice to you. I'm sure he'll change his mind if you ask for his help. Feng Wu stared at Granny Gong in resignation and spoke in an exaggerated tone. He's always been nice to me? Granny Gong, you must be mistaken. He's the worst. Otherwise, he wouldn't be giving me trouble and making me angry all the time. Granny Gong was speechless. She felt a little conflicted, because she couldn't tell Feng Wu that the crown prince had a strange habit of picking on the person he liked. Seeing that Granny Gong was speechless, Feng Wu was satisfied. I'm right, aren't I? I'm Jun Lingyuan's least favorite person. Granny Gong was speechless. If one person in a relationship was silly, it was still manageable. But if both had no idea what was going on, what else was there to be done? Granny Gong was so worried. Granny Gong heaved a sigh and changed the subject. Miss Wu, what are you going to do? The others all looked worried as well. Feng Wu rubbed her chin and fell into thought. There were so many people in the crown prince's residence, and since it involved their dinner, and no one was told to keep the news a secret, the entire household soon heard about it. Every servant in the crown prince's residence was talking about it. Wait, Miss Wu is going to cook dinner for us? I can't wait. Why? She can't possibly finish it. Why do you say that? Why do you think? We need tens of thousands of dishes, and no one is allowed to help her. She can't possibly finish them all even if she has 3 pairs of hands. You're right. So is His Royal Highness punishing Miss Wu? Does His Royal Highness not like Miss Wu anymore? Chapter 1432. Jun Lingyuan's Unspoken Feelings. Chapter 1432. Jun Lingyuan's Unspoken Feelings. So has Miss Wu fallen out of favor? Someone listening quietly in the crowd smiled in satisfaction. It was none other than Wuxia, the senior maid. She had been laying low these days and trying not to be noticed. In fact, she worked for Zhuo Qingwan and would tell the latter everything that was going on in the crown prince's residence. Feng Wu, I didn't expect you to fall out of favor so quickly. There I was feeling so threatened by you. Heh. Wuxia smirked and left. And she wasn't the only maid in the crown prince's residence to think like that. The other women secretly rejoiced and couldn't wait to see Feng Wu embarrass herself. In the study, Jun Lingyuan sat on the couch next to the window and read some memorials to the throne. Feng walked in and stood quietly by his side. Jun Lingyuan hadn't turned a page since Feng came back and was waiting for Feng to tell him what was going outside. However, Feng stood there without uttering a word, which baffled Jun Lingyuan. Frustrated, he threw the memorial away and rose to his feet. After pacing for a moment, he couldn't help but turn around and stare at Feng. However, he feigned an indifferent tone when he asked, "Did you just come back?" Feng said, "Yes, Your Royal Highness." Jun Lingyuan asked, "How's that stupid girl doing? Has she finished cooking?" Feng could see that Jun Lingyuan was trying to hide his concern, and he chose his words carefully. After some thought, Feng gave him a wry smile. "Your Royal Highness, the task is really difficult. There are 3,000 people in this residence, and she'll have to cook at least 10,000 dishes. Moreover, your food requires a careful combination of spiritual essence, and it's less than 2 hours to the start of dinner. No mortal man would be able to achieve that in time." Jun Lingyuan was a little dumbfounded when he heard that. Rubbing his sculpted chin, he said, "I didn't know it was going to be that difficult." Feng smiled in resignation. "It really is. The job is usually done by hundreds of cooks over a few hours, but you ordered Miss Wu to finish it all by herself in 2 hours. That was, Your Royal Highness, isn't that a bit too much?" Jun Lingyuan was one of the smartest people in the empire, so when he could think straight again, he immediately realized how difficult the task was. It took time to cook. However, as arrogant as he was, he would never admit his fault. Despite his concern, he smirked. "She has to take responsibility for what she did. I've already given her a light punishment." Humph. Feng shook his head. The crown prince could be very stubborn. He then asked casually, "Your Royal Highness, what did Miss Wu do to make you so angry?" Jun Lingyuan didn't know what to say. He couldn't tell Feng that it was because Feng Wu had refused to listen when he wanted to talk. Feng would laugh at him if he told the truth. Jun Lingyuan wouldn't stand for such humiliation. Jun Lingyuan immediately went scarlet in the face and bellowed, "Are you curious?" Feng knew his young master too well. He immediately realized that Jun Lingyuan was angry from shame. So he waved his hands repeatedly, No, no, no. I'm not curious at all. I'll go check on Miss Feng Wu. As he backed away, he gave Jun Linyuan an inquiring look. Just go, Jun Linyuan thought. Chapter 1433, The Impossible. Chapter 1433, The Impossible. However, Feng didn't leave. Instead, he gave the crown prince a searching look. Your Royal Highness, may I go? Jun Linyuan wanted to kick him. Of course he could go. What was he waiting for? Your Royal Highness, I'll be on my way then? Feng asked deliberately. Jun Linyuan almost exploded. He said, yes, if you want to. Feng said, well, I don't think I want to go all that much. Jun Linyuan said, out. In the kitchen, Granny Gong looked at Feng Wu sympathetically, because the task was so difficult. As time went by, Feng Wu didn't seem worried at all. Granny Gong, on the other hand, was on edge. If Feng Wu starved everyone in the residence tonight, she would leave such a bad impression on the others. Miss Wu. Granny Gong tried to make Feng Wu see how serious the situation was. The servants may be inferior in status, but each of them has their own role, and you'll probably need their help in the future. But if today, while Granny Gong chattered away, Feng Wu was racking her brain. All the cooks had been ordered to leave the kitchen. Looking around, Feng Wu saw rows upon rows of stoves and pans. There had to be hundreds of them. Since His Royal Highness had said that no one was to help Feng Wu, no one dared to. She even had to wash and chop the vegetables herself. Feng Wu knew that she would never be able to fulfill the original requirement, so she had to find another way. She touched here and there as she walked around, and her eyes lit up when she saw a bag of flour. If I make some noodles? Granny Gong immediately rejected the idea. Don't. His Royal Highness hates noodles, and won't let them touch his lips. Feng Wu frowned. Why is he so difficult? Granny Gong smiled wryly. He has to eat rice then? Feng Wu asked. Granny Gong nodded. His Royal Highness will be displeased if there's no rice, and when that happens, all of us will be in trouble. Feng Wu said, if he has to eat rice, wait a minute. Feng Wu's eyes lit up, as if she had discovered a new world. Granny Gong looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment, and wondered why she was so happy. Granny Gong asked, Miss Wu, do you know what to do now? Feng Wu nodded happily. I do. It won't be a problem. I promise I'll give you perfect results. Granny Gong was about to ask some more, when Feng Wu pushed her toward the door. Just wait for my good news. Once Granny Gong was outside, Feng Wu closed the door behind her. Granny Gong was dumbfounded. Feng arrived at that moment and asked Granny Gong for an update. How's Miss Wu doing? Granny Gong smiled bitterly. I don't know how to answer that question. Feng asked why. Granny Gong said, Miss Wu said she knew what to do and chased us all out, but she didn't tell us what she was going to do. Would she really know what to do? She was supposed to cook for 3,000 people without any help. Everyone was convinced that Feng Wu was bragging. Feng had come here on a mission, so he pushed the door open and walked in. Otherwise, the crown prince would be mad at him. Feng Wu was busy working when Feng walked in. Feng Wu turned out to be really good with her knife, and she was chopping vegetables. Chapter 1434, Back in Northern Border City. Chapter 1434, Back in Northern Border City. Miss Wu, what are you preparing? Feng asked. Feng Wu heard Feng, but she gave him an instruction without looking up. Mr. Feng, you're right on time. Quick, boil some water for me. Feng was dumbfounded. Everywhere he went, he was a revered figure. Even those who worked in the imperial palace treated him with respect, and Zhuo Qingwan herself had to address him respectfully. But now Feng Wu had just told him to boil some water. Seeing that Feng wasn't moving, Feng Wu urged, Mr. Feng, hurry up. My hands are full here. Feng smiled wryly, and found Feng Wu very interesting. He did as he was told. Sitting down behind the biggest stove, he moved a finger slightly, and a flame jumped out from his fingertip to ignite the firewood. If anyone else saw Feng, the steward who was superior to even a lord, doing such a petty task, they would probably pass out from astonishment. Feng chatted with Feng Wu as he worked. Miss Wu, I heard that you've come up with an idea. Feng Wu hesitated and said, I don't know if it's an idea, but I do know what dish to cook. Dish? Feng was shocked. You mean only one dish? Feng said matter-of-factly, that's right. I'm going to serve some rice with meat and vegetables on top. Fish-flavored sliced pork over rice. How does that sound? Feng didn't know what to think, because he didn't quite understand it. Rice served with meat and vegetables? Feng repeated. Yes. Feng Wu chatted with him as she busied herself with cooking. Basically, you pour the mixture over the rice. Is that even edible? Feng was very doubtful. Of course it is. Mr. Feng, that sweet and sour taste mixed with a pinch of hot chili is going to wake your taste buds up. Feng Wu said happily, because she had high expectations for the dish. However, Feng rejected the idea immediately. No. That dish won't do. Feng Wu was confused. Why not? Feng smiled wryly. His Royal Highness hates spicy food, and he'll never touch anything that's slightly spicy. Miss Wu, you should cook something else, because this dish is never going to work. However, Feng Wu remembered something. That didn't seem right. Back when they were in northern border city, Jun Linyuan had indeed refused to eat at first, but then, he might have elegant movements, but he ate as much as everyone else. Your crown prince doesn't eat spicy food, you said? Feng Wu asked. Feng nodded solemnly. That's right. He never touches anything spicy, because it'll give him an allergic reaction. So Miss Wu. Teehee. Feng Wu chuckled. Mr. Feng, who are you kidding? Your master was so happy with my spicy dishes, that he practically licked the plates clean. Allergic to spicy food? You'll have to try harder if you want me to believe that. Feng gave Feng Wu a strange look. His Royal Highness really ate it. Feng Wu said, that's right. He didn't just eat it, he ate a lot of it. He practically gulped up everything that was left on the plates. Feng asked, when did that happen? Feng Wu said, when he was in northern border city. Feng rubbed his forehead. That was why the crown prince had lost a lot of weight when he came back. Is this fish-flavored sliced pork only slightly spicy? Seeing that Feng Wu wouldn't change her mind, Feng asked another question. Chapter 1435. Your Royal Highness, what would you like to know? Chapter 1435. Your Royal Highness, what would you like to know? Feng Wu waved her hands. It's mostly sour and sweet, so please don't worry. Plus, I've chopped up all the ingredients already, and I don't want to waste them. Otherwise, I can cook something else. There's one more thing. Feng smiled bitterly. Feng Wu paused. What is it? Feng said, His Royal Highness doesn't eat fish. To be more precise, he hates fish. Feng Wu was dumbfounded. Feng smiled wryly. Therefore, Miss Wu, please cook something else, because this dish really is going to offend His Royal Highness. Feng Wu chuckled when she heard that. You're mistaken. There's no fish in this fish-flavored sliced pork. Feng was dumbfounded. Feng Wu said, There's a story behind it, quite a long one actually, but since we don't have anything better to do at the moment, I'll tell you about it. Hence, Feng Wu told him how fish-flavored sliced pork was created. Once upon a time, there was a family who loved eating fish, and they were quite particular about the flavors in their fish dishes as well. Hence, they created a special recipe for fish. One day, the wife chopped too many ingredients. She didn't want to waste them, so she used them in another stir-fry, but wasn't sure if it would taste good. She was still worrying about it when her husband came back. The husband was amazed by how delicious the dish was, and the recipe became known as fish-flavored stir-fry. Therefore, there's no fish in fish-flavored sliced pork. Feng Wu grinned at Feng. The main ingredient in fish-flavored sliced pork was lean pork, which was cooked with ear and dried slices of tender bamboo shoots, and used condiments like oil, salt, soy sauce, vinegar, and cooking wine, as well as chopped scallion and garlic. When all was said and done, Feng Wu was a cultivator, and she was great with her knife. Each piece of pork was chopped into 6 cm long slices of the same thickness. She then seasoned the pork with salt, and cooking wine before coating the shreds evenly in starch. Leaving the pork to sit for a while, Feng Wu shredded the wood ear and bamboo shoots, and quick-boiled them in the pot. Meanwhile, she fetched a big pot and made some fish-flavored sauce with soy sauce, sugar, and other condiments. When Feng Wu looked up again, she realized that Feng had left. He needed to report to the crown prince. He knew his young master too well. Right now, the crown prince had to be waiting anxiously for him to go back, but he wouldn't let it show. Indeed, Feng walked into the study to find it filled with a cold, murderous energy. "I thought you would never come back." The crown prince's face was livid. Feng was baffled, because he had only been gone for a little while. "Speak." Jun Linyuan wanted to kick Feng. "Ahem." Feng coughed into his hand. "Your Royal Highness, what would you like to know?" Of course Jun Linyuan wanted to know what was going on with Feng Wu, but he was too proud to say so. Instead, he only stared at Feng. "Ahem." The look in Jun Linyuan's eyes was so fierce that Feng didn't dare tease him. So he slowly said, "Miss Wu seems to have run into some difficulty." "What difficulty?" Jun Linyuan immediately asked. Feng looked at Jun Linyuan and said grumpily, "There's simply too much work. It's impossible for her to finish. I think Miss Wu is going to faint from exhaustion." Jun Linyuan puffed out his cheeks. After stealing a glance at the crown prince, Feng mumbled, "Well, I think she should be considered to have succeeded as long as everyone is fed tonight." Chapter 1436, Lovely Spiritual Pets. Chapter 1436, Lovely Spiritual Pets. Feng was trying to make some excuse for Feng Wu. But Jun Linyuan frowned. By now, he had also realized how difficult the task was. He said angrily, "What's Granny Gong doing? Why didn't she help her?" Feng smiled wryly. "Your Royal Highness, Granny Gong isn't to be blamed. You gave the order yourself that no one was allowed to help her. We all heard it." Jun Linyuan was rendered speechless. Feng said, "Your Royal Highness, would you like to check on her?" Jun Linyuan didn't know what to say. Feng said, "Or would you like to withdraw your order?" Jun Linyuan threw a dirty look at Feng and said proudly, "Withdraw my order?" In her dreams. A lot of people had gathered around the kitchen and were discussing among themselves. Feng Wu was bustling around when Granny Gong walked in. She was so concerned that she had to come in and have a look. As soon as she entered, she saw that Feng Wu was chatting with Feng as she worked, so Granny Gong asked, "Miss Wu, are you sure you don't need any help?" Feng Wu tossed the sliced pork into the oil in the wok on medium heat. As she stir-fried the meat, she said, "Jun Linyuan said no help was allowed. He'll be angry if he knows you tried to help me." Granny Gong sighed in resignation. "Is that the only dish you're going to make?" Seeing the red sauce, Granny Gong frowned, because she knew that His Royal Highness didn't like spicy food. Feng Wu nodded. "One dish is more than enough." It wasn't just any fish-flavored sliced pork, because Feng Wu had added liquid spiritual essence to it. The liquid was the product of the formation core, in Grand Secretary Feng's manor. Feng Wu had set up a special pond there, which produced 1 drop of liquid every day, and which could be used to enhance physical strength. The rapid progress which her family members had been making was also a result of this liquid. Feng Wu had added 1 drop before she scooped the fish-flavored sliced pork out of her wok. Nothing changed at first, but as time went by, an aroma filled the air. "Hey, what's that smell?" Granny Gong found the aroma very appetizing. Feng Wu wasn't going to tell her about the liquid, so she only smiled and said, "I guess this fish-flavored sliced pork just smells so nice." The food in the Crown Prince's residence was supposed to be specially tailored with spiritual essence. Although she had only made 1 dish, it contained as much spiritual essence as all the dishes combined, if not more. Feng Wu was an amazing cook to begin with. With the help of the liquid, when the delicious smell spread out of the kitchen through the closed door. "Hey, what's that smell? That's wonderful. How can it smell so nice? My stomach is growling." No one in the Crown Prince's residence was allowed to help Feng Wu. Luckily, she still had her 2 spiritual pets, Little Phoenix and the tiger cub. Feng Wu asked Granny Gong, "What's the rule here? Do you usually eat in your own quarters, or is there a big dining hall? Feng Wu noticed that there was a huge empty space right next to the kitchen, and tables and benches had been arranged in neat rows. It looked like a place where people went to eat. Granny Gong said, "His Royal Highness doesn't like the residents to smell like food, so almost all the servants eat here. That'll be much easier then." Feng Wu then gave instructions to the cub and little phoenix, telling them to set out the plates. Chapter 1437 Amazing 1. Chapter 1437 Amazing 1. The two pets were very efficient for their tiny sizes. They each held a stack of white plates, and set one down at each seat. Feng Wu walked behind them, and filled the plate with rice. There was one standard spoonful of rice on each plate. And it wasn't ordinary rice. Because Feng Wu had run out of time, she had to cook the rice with her own fire attribute, and she had applied quite a few different techniques. This was the first time Feng Wu had tried to cook with her own fire, so when the rice was out of the pot, wow! Even Feng Wu herself was amazed. "That smells so nice." Granny Gong gave Feng Wu a strange look. She had also tried cooking with the fire attribute before, but everyone knew that because the rice cooked so fast, it was very hard to get much fragrance out of it. But now, this rice smelled so nice. The long tables were lined with big white porcelain plates, and Feng Wu put rice on each of them as she walked down the tables. After making sure that all the plates had rice on them, she started ladling the fish-flavored sliced pork over the rice. The rice was plump, white and chewy, and it already smelled delicious on its own. Now that the fish-flavored sliced pork, with the liquid spiritual essence, was added, the fragrance became even more intense. Strangely, however, after the meat touched the rice, the aroma grew fainter and fainter until it dissipated in the air. The fish-flavored sliced pork over rice didn't look any different from any ordinary dish. Granny Gong was amazed and gave Feng Wu a strange look. "Miss Wu, that's..." Feng Wu shrugged. "I don't know what happened either." Right now a lot of people had gathered around. Apart from the crown prince, everyone else in the residence ate all 3 meals here in the big dining hall. It was dinner time now, and people were queuing outside. "I heard that Miss Feng Wu was the cook today." "That's right. I didn't have any hope in her, but it smelled so amazing just now. I'm so curious. I can't wait to see the food she prepared for us." However, when the door opened and the servants filed in, many of them were astonished. What's this? If I'm not mistaken, that's a side dish poured over rice." "That's it. It can't be. This just has to be the first dish." They were still talking among themselves when Feng Wu and Granny Gong came out. The servants immediately rose to their feet. Granny Gong waved at them and said mildly, "Everyone take a seat. This is your dinner tonight. Enjoy." "Granny Gong, are you serious? This thing is our dinner?" someone cried out. Granny Gong corrected them in a grumpy tone. "This is called fish-flavored sliced pork over rice." "Granny Gong, I know we have a different pay grade and a different meal standard, but even so, you can't just give us a spoonful of rice with this tiny amount of meat. She didn't even make us any soup." "That's right. Granny Gong, you can't be serious." "Miss Wu, we're on the night shift. We won't have the strength to work if you starve us." It was obvious that these few people who were speaking out didn't like Feng Wu. Chapter 1438 Amazing 2. Chapter 1438 Amazing 2. It wasn't easily to tell who was behind them, but it was definitely an organized protest. Their words were highly disruptive, and the calmer servants grew agitated as well. "Granny Gong, are we supposed to eat this? Miss Wu, you're treating us like beggars. If Miss Wu ends up running the residence one day, are we going to be starved all the time?" They believed that the rules wouldn't apply to them if their number was big enough, so everyone spoke at the same time, though no one dared to step out. But Feng Wu still heard every single word. Granny Gong's face darkened when she saw Feng Wu frown. However, just then, they heard footsteps outside. The sound was quite special, and couldn't belong to just any ordinary person, so everyone turned to look. It was none other than Jun Linyuan himself. He seemed to start a gust of wind when he walked in. Dark clouds seemed to gather overhead after he arrived, and the oppressive energy made everyone uneasy. Immediately, everyone stopped talking. They all lowered their heads and avoided Jun Linyuan's sharp gaze. The crown prince looked around the room before his gaze fell on the dinner table. There was only one plate in front of each seat. Jun Linyuan frowned and glanced at Granny Gong. Granny Gong immediately explained, "Your Royal Highness, Miss Wu only had time to make one dish, so she made fish-flavored sliced pork over rice instead." She was a little embarrassed. Dinner was the most important meal for the crown prince, and even the simplest dinner would contain 30 dishes, but now, there was only one dish poured over rice, and the dish was spicy, which His Royal Highness hated. Granny Gong thought that Jun Linyuan would be furious. And she wasn't the only one who expected that. Because this thing was so offensive, not only did she only make one dish, it was also a chilly red color. The crown prince hated spicy food. Something cold glinted in Zhen Xia's eyes. Bishi smiled a little. Everyone was waiting for Jun Linyuan's tantrum when, to their surprise, the crown prince frowned at first, and indeed looked like he was going to lose his temper. Yes, he was about to shout at Feng Wu. Everyone's heart rates picked up, but Jun Linyuan turned around and glared at the crowd. "You should consider yourself lucky to even have food on the table. Who gave you the right to be so picky? Even I haven't said anything yet." Jun Linyuan was furious. He was angry because these servants didn't have the right to be picky. Little Feng Wu made the dish herself, and they should feel grateful to even be able to taste it. Who gave them the right to be so choosy? Finish everything on your plate, down to the last grain of rice. The crown prince glared at the crowd. Do that or wait to be punished. That serious? Everyone exchanged looks, and all of them couldn't believe their ears. However, the crown prince wasn't reasonable when he was angry. He sat down and beckoned Feng Wu over. "Give me a plate." Feng Wu was speechless. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.